Chapter 297. Be careful of the arrow formation. Chu Huaying suddenly pulled on the reins and led the cavalry to charge towards the side of the formation. Everyone raised their shields. In the north, thousands of archers shot a dense barrage of arrows in the darkness. However, this was the strength of the heavy-armored cavalry. After withstanding a round of arrows, only a few of them suffered minor injuries. Not a single one of them died in battle. Swish! The invisible sharp blade shuttled through the crowd. Under Lin Muyu's control, the demonic noise blade quickly killed more than 10 people. It followed its master like a shadow, but none of the volunteer soldiers could see how this sharp blade killed them. The heaven beast's refined soul kept roaring, and it was breathtaking. The dragon spirit sword flew out with the luster of the golden gourd. With a pop sound, it pierced through multiple heavy shields and rapidly exploded. The battle energy transformed into a shock wave that shook 7 or 8 people away. It also quickly tore apart the defensive formation formed by this group of volunteer soldiers. Further ahead, there were still layers of defensive barriers waiting for the Flying Mount Battalion. Long Qianlin was already prepared. Rather than saying that Lin Muyu and Chu Huaying were attacking at night, it was more like they were walking into a trap. It seemed that Long Qianlin had also guessed that the Empire would launch a life-and-death battle. Thus, he arranged more than 10 heavy shield formations and archer formations in the camp. Behind them, there was an even more terrifying spear formation. This was the most terrifying method of battle for the heavy-armored cavalry. Be careful! Chu Huayan spurred his horse and rushed to the front with his sword in hand. Suddenly, his sword flashed and knocked away the tips of several spears. He spurred his horse and charged into the spear formation, brandishing his sword and killing indiscriminately. Behind him, the well-organized Flying Mount Battalion charged forward together with him. As they broke through the spear formation, many soldiers of the Flying Mount Battalion were pierced by the spears. Lin Muyu held her sword and rushed side by side with Chu Huaying. The dragon spirit sword cut through iron as if it was mud. With just one slash, a group of spears were cut in half. She raised her palm and activated the first element profound energy, chaos of the common people. Countless celestial bodies rampaged within the crowd, and in the blink of an eye, nearly 20 volunteer soldiers had turned into corpses. Their bodies were covered in blood, and under the impact of the 7 planets' profound energy, their blood vessels were in turmoil, and their bodies exploded. At this time, there was only one word in Lin Muyu's heart: kill. All the benevolence and righteousness had also vanished at this moment. Being kind to the enemy was being cruel to oneself. He still understood this principle. Moreover, this group of volunteer soldiers were not good people. Most of them were the private army of the Jinan king, Qin Yi, and not the imperial army fighting for the country. In contrast, the winged cavalry battalion, the imperial army that was fighting to protect the capital from being massacred, was much more noble. You! Chu Huaijin turned to look at Lin Muyu and said, "Conserve your energy. Don't use your martial soul and battle qi. This is a war, and we don't know how long this battle will last. You have to maintain your physical strength and dark force." Lin Muyu nodded and said, "Got it, Brother Chu." Just as Chu Huaijin had said, the winged cavalry battalion had been killing for a full half an hour, but they still hadn't managed to break through the encirclement. Moreover, war was originally an art. This battle was more like a battle of attrition. Whoever could last until the end would be the winner. Chu Huaijin was very smart, and he understood the principle of using the least amount of energy to kill the most people. Lin Muyu slowly restrained her true qi and martial soul. It wasn't bad to just rely on her strong physique to kill the enemy. The dragon spirit sword was sharp, and the Jedi warhorse was fully armored. The number of volunteer soldiers who died under the dragon spirit sword didn't decrease too much. Feng Jixing once said that in war, absolute power wasn't absolute. War was like a huge meat grinder. No matter how strong a person was, they would also lose their strength and life in war. A Heaven Realm expert was equivalent to 100 soldiers, a Sanctuary Realm expert was equivalent to 1,000 soldiers, and a God Realm expert was equivalent to 10,000 soldiers. Once the number of people killed exceeded this number, they would probably be exhausted. What was the difference between a sanctuary or god realm expert who had exhausted his battle chi and immortal? Under the leadership of Lin Muyu and Chu Huaying, the Flying Mount Battalion charged forward like they were reaping wheat. Countless volunteer soldiers had already died under the iron hooves of the Flying Mount Battalion, but it seemed as though there was no end to these volunteer soldiers. More and more torches were gathering in the distance. It was obvious that the Flying Mount Battalion had attracted the attention of the volunteer soldiers, and they had started to increase their numbers. "Commander!" A winged cavalry battalion's commandant pulled out a bloody spear from a corpse. The spear splashed on his face, but he didn't care. With a pale face, he said, "We can't break through. The volunteer soldiers are constantly increasing their numbers. At least 150,000 soldiers are rushing towards us from all directions. If we don't retreat now, I'm afraid we won't have a chance." Chu Huaijin looked up at the stars in the sky and said, "It's not midnight yet. Continue to charge forward." "Yes." Lin Muyu remained silent. Behind her, 70 Imperial Guards from the Eagle's Nest camp had also joined the Winged Cavalry Battalion's battle formation. Each of them brandished their weapons and slashed at the volunteer soldiers. However, there were constant stray arrows on both sides, and many of them were already injured. Even Wei Chao's chest was pierced by an arrow, and he was bleeding profusely. Although the Winged Cavalry Battalion had killed many enemies, they had also suffered many casualties. However, this was war. The Winged Cavalry Battalion's mission was to attract more volunteer soldiers to gather here, and then to fight for the best time for the Longdan army camp to burn down the Lingnan rations. As they charged forward, they looked up towards the east. It was completely dark there. Lin Muyu's heart was filled with apprehension. She didn't know if the Longdan army camp had set off. With the level of elites in the Longdan army camp, as long as there were less than 5 volunteer soldiers guarding the granary, she believed that they would be able to successfully attack. Everything depended on Luo Yu and Fengxi. They didn't know how long they had been charging back and forth, but the more they killed, the more volunteer soldiers there were. Lin Muyu's white battle robe was already dyed red with blood, and Chu Huaijin wasn't much worse off. Chu Huaijin's shoulder was even injured. This was the work of a spear thrower. The spear pierced through Chu Huaijin's fragile battle armor and directly injured him. Looking at the stars in the sky and calculating the time, Lin Muyu said, "It's about time. Let's break through the encirclement." "Okay." Chu Huaijin turned around and charged out with his sword. He shouted, "Turn around!" The entire cavalry formation quickly turned around and rushed towards the volunteer soldiers. However, a black shadow quickly attacked them from the sky. It was the spear thrower. These spears were very sharp, and they instantly pierced through the bodies of many winged cavalry battalion soldiers. The soldiers and their war horses were twisted together and trampled on each other. It was a tragic sight. However, Lin Muyu, Chu Huaijin, and the others didn't hesitate at all. They continued to lead the survivors and charged forward. Swoosh! The battle energy raged again. Lin Muyu opened her hands, and the golden gourd martial soul shone brightly. Golden gourd vines whizzed through the gaps in the crowd and suddenly separated the volunteer soldiers from the spear formation, opening up a path for the winged cavalry battalion. "Well done." Chu Huaijin laughed loudly. He waved his sword and cut off the head of a volunteer soldier. He shouted, "Brothers of the Winged Cavalry Battalion, we have completed our mission. It's time to go home." However, it was destined that many people wouldn't be able to go home. The volunteer soldiers swarmed over and separated the cavalry at the back into small groups. They completely separated the rear part of the cavalry. Then, they wantonly stabbed their spears, piercing the brave heavy cavalry and their war horses like hedgehogs. In less than 10 minutes, at least 1,000 winged cavalry battalion soldiers had their blood spilled on this piece of land. Lin Muyu couldn't help but look back. Her heart was filled with pity, but this was war. It sharpened his will and helped him to grow and change. Heroes are created by the times. Perhaps this was the moment right now. Kill! The killing intent in his eyes intensified. He waved his right hand, and the dragon spirit's sword flew out under the energy of the imperial fire sword. He raised his hand and took out the pear blossom spear from his chenkuan bag. He suddenly shook the spear, and the spearhead drilled into the abdomen of a volunteer soldier, sending him flying and smashing him into another group of people. At the same time, the spear soul was suddenly activated. An ice Kirin roared and rushed into the crowd, freezing a group of volunteer soldiers into ice and then crushing them. The moment the pear blossom spear appeared, many volunteer soldiers were scared and retreated. At this time, Chu Huaijin didn't hold back his battle energy anymore. On his shoulder, the purple Martin martial soul shone brightly. He raised his left hand, and a crescent energy fell from the sky and blasted into the crowd. Then, starlight pierced through the bodies of the volunteer soldiers. Although the star-picking finger was elegant, it wasn't inferior when it came to killing. When he returned to about 200 meters away from the city gate was already surrounded by a dense mass of volunteer soldiers. A group of spearmen swarmed over, and a fierce general with the rank of Chili Arch shouted, "Cut off their retreat. It's easy to come out, but they want to return to the city? Dream on." Lin Muyu didn't hesitate and said, "Kill!" At this moment, the city gate suddenly opened, and a familiar voice roared, "Warriors of the imperial capital, kill your way out and support the brothers of the Flying Mount Battalion. Archers on the city wall, fire your arrows and kill those southern barbarian spearmen." It was Du Hai, the #1 warrior of the empire. He led the Tianchong army out of the city and quickly broke through the phalanx formed by this group of spearmen. Lin Muyu and Chu Huaijin also took the opportunity to lead the Flying Mount Battalion back into the city. They didn't continue to fight. Outside the city, there were soldiers of the Flying Mount Battalion dying in battle every second. Lanyan City couldn't bear any more losses. Unknowingly, the Flying Mount Battalion had been killing outside for more than 4 hours. The eastern sky was already turning bright. Below the city wall, Du Hai scared off the Iha nation's army with 2 slashes. He returned to the city and checked on the damage done to the Flying Mount Battalion. Lin Muyu looked back and saw that Wei Chou, Xiahou Sang, and the others were all injured. She also had an arrow in her arm. She didn't even know when the arrow was shot. "Commander, you're injured," Wei Chou said hurriedly. "I'm fine." Lin Muyu reached out and pulled out the arrow in pain. She asked, "How's the situation of the Eagle Nest Battalion?" Wei Chou looked gloomy and said, 17 Imperial Guards, and more than 300 Imperial Guards died in battle." "Oh." Lin Muyu responded faintly, but her heart ached. The Flying Mount Battalion marched slowly on the main road of the city. There were torches on both sides of the road, and many commoners were watching from both sides. However, the commoners' eyes were clearly filled with indifference. This made Lin Muyu feel even more distressed. In this battle, the Flying Mount Battalion sent 17,000 people out of the city, and less than 5,000 people returned. So many people died, but she didn't know who it was for. Chapter 298. Pa! A hard object smashed into Lin Muyu's face, but he quickly caught it with one hand. It was a piece of dry, hard bread. He looked up and saw that the person who threw the bread was a child about 10 years old. His face was full of childishness. His grandfather's face was ashen as he hurriedly said, "Sir, this child doesn't know any better. Please don't blame him." Lin Muyu looked at him indifferently, then her gaze fell on the child. "Why did you throw bread at me?" The child's eyes were filled with hatred that didn't match his age. "You dogs of the Empire, why don't you let the Iha nation's army enter Lanyan City? As long as they enter, Grandpa will be able to obtain land and our family will be able to eat soft bread every day." Lin Muyu smiled and rode up to him. She looked down at him and said, "Are you sure the Iha nation's army will give you bread after entering Lanyan City and not take away what you still have?" The child shook his head. "No, the Iha nation's army is all good people." On the side, Wei Chou slowly walked over with his sword in hand and said indifferently, "Commander, as long as you give the order, this subordinate will execute this ignorant little bastard for attacking the Imperial army." The child's grandfather immediately knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. Sir, please don't. He's still young and doesn't know any better. Please don't kill him. Lin Muyu shook her head and said, Forget it. Let's go and let everyone rest early. Yes. Wei Cho nodded. However, at this moment, a cold brick smashed into Xiahou Sang's face with a swoosh, causing his nose to bleed profusely. Xiahou Sang was already injured and looked like he was on the verge of death. He raised his head and saw that the person who smashed him was a young man in his 20s. In a fit of rage, he immediately drew his sword and shouted, Bastard! You don't want to live anymore? The young man quickly turned around and disappeared into the alley. Xiahou Sang wanted to give chase, but Lin Muyu hurriedly said, Xiahou, come back. Don't give chase. Don't cause unnecessary trouble. Xiahou Sang's face was full of grievance. His eyes were red, and the hand holding the sword was trembling slightly. Sir, I, Xiahou Sang, have been loyal to the Empire all my life. Aren't we protecting these lowly commoners by fighting for the Empire? Why do they treat us like this? I, Xiahou, have never suffered such injustice in my life. Lin Muyu said indifferently, You and I are both soldiers of the Empire. This is something we must bear. Enough, let's go back to camp. Yes. Just as Lin Muyu and the others were about to enter the Eagle Nest Battalion's campsite, a messenger from the Flying Mount Battalion suddenly galloped over and happily said, Commander Lin, it's a success. Success. What succeeded? Our plan worked. The Autumn Wind Town in the east is on fire. Oh, Lin Muyu hurriedly went straight to the northern city wall. The moment she climbed up the city wall, she saw the eastern fire soaring into the sky. Sure enough, the Autumn Wind Town where the volunteer soldiers were hoarding rations was on fire. It seemed like the people from the Longdan army camp had succeeded. The sound of messenger birds flapping their wings could be heard in the air. A bird slowly landed. Lin Muyu took the letter tube and looked at it. It was a letter from Luo Yu. Sir, the mission has been completed. The rations camp in the Autumn Wind Town has been reduced to ashes. They sent 40,000 soldiers to defend it. The Longdan army camp lost 5,000 soldiers and many were injured. Please punish them. Lin Muyu felt distressed and happy at the same time. She replied, Well done. Continue to guard the Dragon Rocky Mountain and wait for my orders. At this moment, she turned around and saw a group of people walking over. It was Feng Jixing, Zhang Wei, Luo Lai, and the other imperial guards. Feng Jixing looked up and saw Lin Muyu on the city wall. He said loudly, You? How are you? I heard you were injured? It's just a small injury. It's not a big deal. Brother Feng, what's the situation with the imperial guards? They lost 3,000 soldiers. Their main force is not at the east gate. Oh, that's good. Feng Jixing looked at the dawn in the east and said, Since the rations camp of the volunteer soldiers has been burned, they won't be able to hold on for long. It's almost dawn. Let's go. Her Highness Yin is still waiting for our reply in Zetian Palace Hall. Amen, all right. There was no time to tidy up her clothes. Lin Muyu brought Wei Cho and Xiahou Sang with her to Zetian Palace Hall. Feng Jixing was almost the same as Lin Muyu. Everyone's battle robes were blood red. Even the dark blue imperial military uniform under their armor was dyed dark red. It was a clear proof of the word, bathed in blood. In Zetian Palace Hall, the maidservants blew out the immortal crane lanterns one after another. The officials were still waiting anxiously in the main hall. At this moment, Feng Jixing, Lin Muyu, Chu Huayin, and the other generals entered the main hall. An attendant immediately shouted excitedly, Commander Feng Jixing, Commander Chu Huayin, and Madame Lin Muyu request an audience. Qin Yin was currently sleeping with her face resting on her hands. She immediately opened her eyes when she heard this voice and rushed to the imperial steps. She looked at Lin Muyu with pleasant surprise and said, Brother Yu, did you succeed? Amen. Lin Muyu nodded. I have already received a letter from the Longdan army camp. The volunteer army's rations and fodder camp have been burned to the ground. That's great. Qin Yin was overjoyed. However, When her gaze landed on Lin Muyu, her heart ached as if it was being cut by a knife. You're injured? It's nothing. It's just a small injury. Everyone is injured. Lin Muyu smiled. Qin Yin was now the master of Lanyan City. She was everyone's highness. Qin Yin belonged to everyone, not just him, Lin Muyu. Although he knew that Qin Yin loved him deeply, he couldn't act recklessly at this time. Otherwise, he would disappoint her. Qin Yin seemed to be aware of Lin Muyu's meaning. A shy smile flashed across her beautiful face as she said, "Emin, I know." As she spoke, Qin Yin turned around and walked up the imperial steps. She sat down on the throne and said, "Everyone has worked hard. Commander Feng Jixing is the main contributor in this attack to burn Qin Yi's rations. Commander Chu Huayin and Brother Yu are the secondary contributors. After the battle is over, there will be great rewards. Oh right, is there any news from Qihai City and Muyu City?" Du Hai gritted his teeth and said, "There's news from Muyu City." Duke Yun replied and informed us that there was another heavy snowfall after spring in Yunzhong province. Moreover, it lasted for 5 days. The heavy snowfall has blocked the Yunzhong ancient road. Even though Duke Yun has gathered 200,000 troops, he is unable to come over. Hence, Your Highness must hold on. Once the Muyu City army has cleared the snow, they will naturally send reinforcements. 5 days of heavy snowfall can delay the journey of 200,000 troops? The veins on Feng Jixing's handsome face popped. He said, "Excuses. This is simply an excuse. Su Muyun is clearly making up an excuse. He wants to wait until the day our Lanyan City falls before the snow melts." "General Feng, please watch your words." Minister Luo Xing sneered. "Duke Yun is Your Highness' maternal grandfather. He will not sit and watch Lanyan City fall. Don't you understand such simple logic?" Feng Jixing laughed. "I only know how to use troops. I don't know the ways of the world. Please enlighten me." Lord Luo Xing snorted coldly and did not speak again. Qin Yin continued to ask, "Is there any news from Qihai City? It has been so many days. Xiao Yin should have reached Qihai City long ago, right? Why is there no news at all?" Du Hai cupped his fists and said, "Your Highness, Qihai City lost 60,000 troops at Demon Subduing Pass because Wuxia underestimated the enemy. Their strength is greatly weakened. Perhaps Duke Lan is still angry and is unwilling to send troops? This general thinks that Your Highness should write another letter to explain the current crisis of Lanyan City. I believe that Duke Lan will definitely send troops." Qin Yin nodded. "All right, I understand." At this moment, a middle-aged general suddenly rushed into the hall. It was the commander of the city patrol. He cupped his fists and said, "Your Highness, something bad has happened. There is a large hole in the east wall. The Iha nation's army is attacking." "What?" Qin Yin stood up abruptly and said, "How many people have attacked?" "About 2,000, and they are still increasing. However, the Imperial Guards have already gone to stop them." "I understand." Qin Yin waved her hand and said, "Send more reinforcements. We must drive all the volunteer soldiers out of Lanyan City. Also, repair the wall immediately. It must be done within a day. Otherwise, don't come to see me." "Yes, Your Highness." The commander of the city patrol walked out of the hall with a pale face. Chu Huaijin cupped his fists and said, "Your Highness, this general will lead the Flying Mount Battalion to intercept the volunteer soldiers who have entered the city. Commander Chu, you have worked hard. Go." "Yes." Feng Jixing watched Chu Huaijin's back as he left. He looked up at Qin Yin and said, "Your Highness, the Iha nation's catapults are very powerful. The 4 walls of Lanyan City have been seriously damaged. I'm afraid they won't be able to hold on for long." I know. Qin Yin stared blankly into the distance and murmured, "There's no news from Seven Seas City and Sunset Rain City. We can only do our best and leave the rest to fate. Let's just let Lanyan City hold on for as long as we can." "Yes, Your Highness." At this moment, a general suddenly crawled into the hall, covered in blood. He was in a sorry state. There were even tears in his eyes. The tears flowed down and mixed with the blood on his face. "Who are you?" Feng Jixing shouted. "How can you be so rude?" The general wiped the tears in his eyes and said, "I am Zhang Zhong, the commander of the Imperial Guard's Iron Foot Battalion." "Commander, don't you recognize me? General Zhang Zhong?" Feng Jixing couldn't help but laugh. "How did you end up like this? The warriors of the Imperial Guards are all warriors of the Qin clan. We are calm and unruffled. You don't look like you are calm and unruffled at all." Zhang Zhong bawled and fished out a blood-stained letter from his chest. He said, "I risked my life to snatch an Empire's messenger bird from the chaotic army. I obtained this letter from His Majesty. Commander, Your Highness, His Majesty isn't dead yet." "What? Father isn't dead?" Qinin hurriedly stood up and ran down the steps. She snatched the letter from Zhang Zhong's hand and saw a line of words clearly written on it. It was Qin Jin's handwriting. "We and the Tianchong army fought our way out of the encirclement and were surrounded on Mount Tianho on the way back to the capital. Please rescue us quickly." Qin Yin's hand trembled as she held the letter. Tears flowed from her eyes. "Father isn't dead. Father is still alive. Wu." Chapter 299. Tianming Mountain. Tianming Mountain. Feng Jixing held the letter in his hand and said with a frown, "Heaven's Edge Mountain is a lone peak. Once it is surrounded, it will be impossible to descend. If there is no military force to coordinate from the inside and outside, it will be a dangerous place." As he spoke, Feng Jixing cupped his fists and said, "Your Highness Yin, Feng Jixing requests to lead the Imperial Army to rescue Your Majesty." "No, not possible." The person who objected was Chu Chu. With a solemn face, he said, "Regardless of whether this letter is real or fake, even if His Majesty is really surrounded in Tianming Mountain, the Imperial Army must not leave Lanyan City. Lanyan City only has this amount of military force. Once the Imperial Army leaves, there will only be 40 to 50,000 men and horses. How can they stop the Iha country's 300,000 troops?" Feng Jixing looked up at Chu Chu and said, "Chu, His Majesty is the ruler of this world. As officials, how can we not save him?" Taking 10,000 steps back, "His Majesty is Xiao Yin's father and treats us like nephews. Do you think that we should not rescue His Majesty?" Lin Muyu was silent for a few seconds and said, "We should rescue. How about this? I will order the Longdan army camp to rescue His Majesty, and the Imperial Army will continue to stay in Lanyan City. What does Big Brother Feng think?" Feng Jixing's face was a little pale and he did not speak. Lin Muyu saw through his thoughts. "Big Brother Feng is, you do not trust the Longdan army camp?" "Yes." Feng Jixing held the beheading wind blade and his eyes were filled with determination. "This time, His Majesty must not have any accidents. I have made up my mind. Feng Jixing will lead the 30,000 Imperial Army to break out of the encirclement and rescue His Majesty at Tianming Mountain. Requesting for Your Highness Yin's permission." Qin nodded. Permission granted." Her heart was concerned about Qin Jin's life and death and was more determined than Feng Jixing. Lin Muyu sighed and did not say anything else. She only said, "In that case, I will lead the Eagle Nest camp to clear the way for Brother Feng." "No." Feng Jixing shook his head and said, You can't stay in Lanyan City." "Why?" "You have to go to Dragon Rocky Mountain, personally command the Longdan army camp, and fight your way back to Lanyan City. Only then can the Longdan army camp be stationed in Lanyan City." Feng Jixing looked at him deeply and said, "Big Brother Feng will protect His Majesty, and you will protect Xiaoyin, okay? No matter which one of us survives, we must continue on this path." Lin Muyu felt a lump in her throat. She couldn't help but turn her face away and say, "Lin Muyu will obey your orders?" Feng Jixing patted his shoulder and squeezed out an ugly smile on his blood-stained face. "We'll leave in 2 hours. Can you accompany Xiaoyin well during this time?" "Yes." Lin Muyu's heart sank. She knew what Feng Jixing meant. It was easier said than done to fight their way out of the encirclement and then fight their way back. This was a path that was accompanied by death. Whether they could come back or not depended on the will of the heavens. Qin Yin stood up and took Lin Muyu's hand. Let's go take a look at father's kitchen? Yes. The two entered the rear hall. The attendants did not follow them, but they all stayed where they were with mournful expressions. Everyone could feel that Seven Seas City and Muyu City had refused to send troops. This might be the last few days of the empire's existence on the continent. In the rear hall, all the kitchen utensils that Qin Jin had used were placed neatly. Qin Yin pulled Lin Muyu's hand to the windowsill of the side hall. Under the window was a polished bronze mirror. Qin Yin slowly sat down and picked up a comb. She said with a smile, "Big brother Yu, can you comb Xiao Yin's hair? In the past, it was father who combed my hair." Lin Muyu felt a little bitter in her heart. She took the comb and gently removed the golden princess crown from Qin Yin's hair and placed it to the side. Instantly, Qin Yin's beautiful hair fell down. Lin Muyu gently stroked her long hair, combing it over and over again. She raised her head and looked at Qin Yin's beautiful face in the mirror. Qin Yin was also looking at her. Qin Yin looked at the mirror and did not say a word. Tears flowed down her face. "Don't cry. Everything will get better," Lin Muyu murmured. Qin Yin held Lin Muyu's hand and buried her face in his chest. She cried, "No, this country has really collapsed. Just like the name of the continent, the 9 cauldrons have been destroyed. There is no longer an imperial family." Lin Muyu calmly caressed the side of Qin Yin's face and said, "Xiao Yin, don't cry. Xiao Yin, don't cry." Qin Yin cried even more fiercely. She turned around and hugged Lin Muyu. Her voice trembled as she said, "I don't want the empire, but I want this family. I want father to come back. I want brother Yu to be by my side. Why me? Why do I have to bear all of this?" Lin Muyu smiled slightly. "Xiao Yin, it's okay. Father and I will come back." "No." Qin Yin bit her red lips and tears filled her eyes. "I have been having the same dream every night. In the dream, father told me that I must be strong and live on. I know, father might really be gone, but I must make Feng Jixing go to Tianming Mountain. Brother Yu, forgive me. Forgive Xiao Yin for being stubborn this time." "Yes, I know." Lin Muyu's body trembled slightly. A piercing pain came from the wound on his arm. He lowered his head to look at Qin Yin and said, "Everything will be fine. Xiao Yin, wipe away your tears. I haven't finished combing your hair." "Yes." Qin Yin sobbed softly. She looked at herself and Lin Muyu in the mirror. It was like a big brother was dressing his little sister and waiting for her to get married. However, this scene seemed to be on the verge of shattering. This was the last time it would happen. After combing her hair, Qin Yin coiled her own hair and inserted an exquisite golden crown. She regained some of her princess-like demeanor. She stood up and turned to look at Lin Muyu, saying, "Regardless of success or failure, you must come back alive to see me. Don't worry, I will." Lin Muyu turned to look outside and said, "There's not much time left. I have to go." "Yes." After watching Lin Muyu walk out of the side hall, Qin Yin couldn't help but sob again. Her voice was as soft as a mosquito's buzz. "I love you. You must come back alive to see me." Outside the main hall, Wei Chou and Xiahou Sang led a group of royal guards and royal guards, waiting for Lin Muyu's orders. They hadn't slept the entire night, but their fighting spirit was still high. "Commander, are we leaving?" Wei Chou asked. Lin Muyu nodded. "Yes, but this time, I can't guarantee that I can bring you back alive." Wei Chou smiled. "Commander, don't worry. We can come back by ourselves." "That's good. Let's go." "Yes." On the northern city wall, the city wall was suffering from heavy attacks from the catapults. A large portion of the city wall had already collapsed. Zhang Wei was leading a group of people to repair it. At the same time, the streets of the city were densely packed with the Imperial Army's heavy cavalry, shield-bearers, pikemen, archers, etc. Over the past few days, more than 10,000 Imperial Army soldiers had died in battle, but Feng Jixing still managed to gather together an army of 30,000. You're here?" Feng Jixing carried his wind-chopping saber and rode his horse over with a smile. He said, "This bunch of bastard volunteers have destroyed another section of the city wall. Damn it. We are preparing to set off." Lin Muyu looked at the sparse guards in the city and said, "Brother Feng, leave Zhang Wei and 1,000 imperial guards here. I'm worried that the city will really fall, and Xiao Yin will have too few people by her side. Am I all right?" Feng Jixing turned and said, "Zhang Wei, lead the brothers of the 1st Battalion to stay and defend the city." Zhang Wei cupped his fists. "Yes, Commander." "Open the gates, attack." The iron gates slowly opened, and 30,000 imperial guards welcomed the rain of spears and swords as they charged towards the densely packed volunteers outside the city. Facing an opponent several times their size, not a single one of them revealed a trace of fear. At this time, Qihai City. In the depths of the Duke's mansion, in an exquisite and elegant courtyard room, a bang sound was heard as a hole was punched through the door. Tang Xiaoxi's beautiful face appeared behind the hole and said, "Let me out, Grandpa. You can't do this." Tang Lan leaned on her walking stick and turned shakily to look at Tang Xiaoxi, saying, "Xiao Shi, why can't you understand grandfather's painstaking efforts?" "What painstaking efforts?" Tang Xiaoxi said angrily. "You're obviously greedy for life and afraid of death. You're an important official of the empire, a duke of a region, but you're afraid of death and don't dare to send troops. I've seen through you. Grandfather is no longer the great general who followed the previous emperor to war." "What did you say?" Tang Lan was slightly angered, saying, "Don't you understand? This is a brotherly dispute between Qin Jin and Qin Yi. It's best for our Qihai City not to get involved. Besides, Qin Jin's godson, Lin Muyu, killed your older brother, Tang Bin. I will never forget this grudge. You should also remember that Lin Muyu is an enemy of the Tang family. We shouldn't save him. He killed my cousin in order to save me. How many times do I have to tell you before you understand?" Tang Xiaoxi looked at him with teary eyes and said, "Grandfather, I don't care about your concealing techniques. Xiao Shi only knows that Xiao Yin and Mu are the most important people to me. I can't lose them. If grandfather doesn't save them, Xiao Shi will go myself." "You're crazy, Xiao Shi," a middle-aged man berated. "Is this how you talk to your grandfather?" "Humph, second uncle, you're just a coward who's afraid of death." Tang Xiaoxi suddenly laughed and said while crying, "The imperial capital is surrounded. The imperial guards and the Flying Mount Battalion are fighting to the death. They only have tens of thousands of people. Our Qihai City has close to 200,000 soldiers, but we're just watching from the sidelines. Is Qihai City still a city of the Qin Empire? If you guys aren't going, Tang Xiaoxi, will go alone." Tang Lan shouted, "Xiao Shi, are you crazy?" However, at this moment, flames suddenly rose from the small house. Tang Xiaoxi gritted her teeth and spread out 9 dancing flame tails behind her. She said, "You guys can't trap me." Boom! The soul-suppressing seal soared into the sky and destroyed the house. Tang Xiaoxi leaped up and lay on the roof like a beautiful little fox. With a leap, she disappeared from Tang Lan's sight. Heavens! This crazy girl! Tang Lan gritted her teeth. "Send someone to find Xiao Shi immediately. We must bring her back." "Yes," the middle-aged man said. "But father, the envoy from Iha Nation is still waiting in the living room. What should we do?" Tang Lan said indifferently, "Let him go. Tell him to tell Qin Yi that there will be a war between Qihai Province and Iha Nation. Tell Qin Yi to wash his neck and wait for Qihai City's butcher knife. Oh yes, that person. Have you found him?" "Yes, he has been arranged to stay in the post house in the city. It's a secret for now. Treat him well and don't neglect him. He's a rare, exceptional general." "Yes, don't worry, father." Chapter 300. Outside Lanyan City, 30,000 imperial guards led the charge to break out of the encirclement. Feng Jixing held his long blade and rode his horse to the front of the formation. The purple electric flame wolf martial soul was entrenched around him, as though there was no one around. Lin Muyu led Wei Qiu, Xiahou sang, and the rest of the Eagle Nest Camp's armored soldiers and followed the Imperial Guards to kill their way through. After breaking through 7 to 8 obstructing shield formations, the front was actually empty. The Iha country's army moved to the sides like a tide, as though they were afraid, but it was more like they were deliberately avoiding the enemy. "What's going on?" Feng Jixing held his bloody long saber and said through gritted teeth, "Long Qianlin wants to let the Imperial Guards break out of the encirclement on purpose." Lin Muyu lowered her sword, grabbed Judy's reins, and galloped all the way. She said with a serious expression, "Big Brother Feng, something is wrong. We can't break out of the encirclement so easily. The Iha nation's army isn't that weak. There must be a trap." Feng Jixing nodded. "I know. But we still have to go to Heaven's Causeway Mountain. You must be careful." Lin Muyu frowned. "Heaven's Causeway Mountain is most likely a trap. You must be extra careful. The Iha nation's people are hypocritical and cunning. If it's not absolutely necessary, don't go to Heaven's Causeway Mountain." "Yes, I know." Feng Jixing nodded and said with a smile, You must also be careful. Long Qianlin must have already noticed Dragon Rocky Mountain, and it's most likely surrounded now." "I know. Let's part ways here." "Okay." Lin Muyu suddenly pulled the reins, and Ju Di let out a long neigh. He took his master to the northeast, while Wei Chou, Xiahou sang, and the other soldiers of the Eagle Nest Camp followed. Feng Jixing shouted, and led the 30,000 Imperial Guards eastward towards Heaven's Causeway Mountain. The Eagle's Nest Camp was made up entirely of cavalry. They moved at lightning speed. After 4 hours, they could already see Dragon Rocky Mountain in the distance. Just as Feng Jixing had expected, the flags of the Iha nation were flying at the foot of Dragon Rocky Mountain. This place was surrounded. However, there were not many soldiers surrounding the mountain, no more than 20,000 at most. With the remaining 15,000 soldiers in the Longdan army camp, it would definitely not be a problem for them to rush out. A messenger bird. Lin Muyu turned around and said. Wei Chou immediately took the cage from the side of the horse and handed the messenger bird to Lin Muyu. Lin Muyu quickly wrote a line of words. Luo Yu, I have led the Eagle Nest camp to the west of Dragon Rocky Mountain to provide support. You will lead all the troops of the Longdan army camp down the mountain and follow me back to the imperial capital. Lin Muyu, whoosh! The bird flapped its wings and flew high into the sky. Like a sharp white arrow, it shot towards the towering Dragon Rocky Mountain. Not long after, the sound of drums on the mountain did not stop. Countless flags of the Longdan army camp could be faintly seen flying in the air. There were also some families' purple flower flags among them. It seemed that Luo Yu had already regarded the Longdan army camp as one of the many armies of the empire. They are charging down the mountain, Xiahou Sang said with a slightly excited smile. Lin Muyu nodded. Let's go. We will charge in from the periphery. We will coordinate from the inside and the outside to welcome the Longdan army camp down the mountain. Yes. After returning the dragon spirit sword to its sheath, Lin Muyu directly held the pear blossom spear and charged forward. Under the tactics of cavalry, the spear was naturally more lethal. As the saying went, an inch longer was an inch stronger. Moreover, the pear blossom spear was cold and sharp. It was very suitable for charging on horseback. Immediately, the hundreds of people from the Eagle Nest camp, led by Lin Muyu, charged into the Iha nation's camp from the back like tigers entering a flock of sheep. Xiahou Sang's broadsword directly chopped off the head of a volunteer soldier. He swept his gaze around and shouted, Commander, the ones surrounding the mountain are the troops of Swift White Province's Sunset City. Count Xiang Manning is already an old thing, yet he still dares to come to the northern ridge to mess with us. He is simply an old bastard. Kill them all. Count Xiang Manning? Lin Muyu frowned. At the same time, she also realized that the volunteer soldiers in front of her were indeed on the weak side. The soldiers seemed to have been out of battle formation for a long time. Faced with the Imperial Guards and Royal Army's attacks, they did not even have the slightest bit of strength to fight back. Just like that, she and her people killed their way into the depths of the camp. After Wei Chou shot the vanguard general with one arrow, the more than 10,000 volunteer soldiers lost their leader and completely became a target for slaughter. On the mountain, the Longdan army camp roared down. Luo Yu and Fengshi rushed at the front of the crowd. How could the Sunset City army possibly withstand the elite heavy cavalry? In the blink of an eye, they tore through the encirclement. The powerful battle formation of the Longdan army camp directly caused the Iha nation's army to be frightened out of their wits. Their flags fluttered, and they collapsed without a fight. Seeing the Iha nation's army retreat like the tide, Luo Yu continued to ride forward. She found Lin Muyu in the crowd, cupped her fists and said, "Madam, should we chase after them?" "No need." Lin Muyu shook her head. "This volunteer army is not worthy of being our opponent. Follow me back to Lanyan City immediately. We are needed there." "Yes." Turning their horses around, the 15,000 elites of the Longdan army camp, led by Lin Muyu and Luo Yu, charged straight for Lanyan City. The sound of hooves was earth-shattering. It was as if this army had become Lanyan City's only hope. However, Lin Muyu did not know that Lanyan City had already reached a point of no return. Boom! The city wall collapsed by another 20 meters. Zhang Wei, who was standing on the city wall, was dumbfounded. He watched as more than a dozen Imperial guards fell into the rubble and were smashed into a pile of minced meat. The long saber in his hand was still trembling, and his face was ashen. He said, "Repair the city wall immediately. Archers, shoot. Don't stop. The moment we stop, the Iha nation barbarians outside will kill their way in." "Yes." "Guard the city gate and organize the shield formation below the city wall." "Yes." A chilly arch of the Imperial Guards looked at Zhang Wei with a pale face and said, "General Zhang, the Imperial Guards have suffered heavy losses. We don't have more people to organize the shield formation to protect the city gate." "I don't care." Zhang Wei roared angrily. "Even if I have to find all the prostitutes in Lanyan City, you have to organize a shield formation of 100 people to protect the city gate. Go. Someone, send a message to Zetian Palace and ask General Qin Lei to send the Imperial Guards to reinforce the North Gate. The barbarians outside the North Gate are attacking like crazy." "Heavens! Yes, General." Tongtian Street was bustling with people. They knew their fate on the day the city was breached. So many of them had already prepared their carriages. They were prepared to rush out and escape once the city gate was breached. They could not wait for death in the city. This made it even more difficult for the troops guarding the city to advance. In the distance, golden-purple Yinhua flags could be seen waving in the crowd. "Get out of the way!" An angry roar exploded in the crowd like a muffled thunder. It was Qin Lei, the commander of the Royal Guards. He was dressed in golden armor and carried the thunder-split blade. He personally led the Dragon Guards and Tiger Guards to kill their way over. In the crowd was a young girl wearing a king's crown. It was Qin Yin. Qin Yin had also personally come to defend the city. Zhang Wei hurriedly flew down the city wall and bowed respectfully. "Your Highness, you really shouldn't have come to the city gate. It's too dangerous here. The southern barbarians of Iha Nation are attacking like crazy. We can't defend the North Gate for much longer." "No, we must defend it." Qin Yin raised her hand and pulled out the purple Yinhua sword. She shouted, "As long as the city lives, we live. If the city dies, we die." The soldiers' morale was immediately boosted by the princess's arrival. Many people even rushed up the city wall and shouted, "Who can give me a sword? I also want to fight for the empire." Behind Qin Yin, a group of generals and civil officials shouted, "Your Highness, be careful. You are the only bloodline of the empire. You can't come to such a dangerous place. Hurry and return to Zetian Palace with us." Qin Yin did not care so much. With a few leaps, she landed on the city wall. In the distance, a scaling ladder was rapidly approaching the city wall. The volunteer soldiers on the scaling ladder aimed at Qin Yin, the general who was wearing the clothes of the empire's royal family. They raised their hands and shot a round of arrows. Humph! Qin Yin held the purple Yinhua sword horizontally in front of her chest. She lightly shook it. Suddenly, The purple Yinhua sword let out a sharp sword cry. It turned into a sound wave and attacked. 3 volunteer soldiers fell from the ladder. Qin Yin stomped on the bricks of the city wall with her small boots. 6 golden god-binding chains protected her body. She jumped on the ladder and the sword light flashed continuously. 4 volunteer soldiers fell to the ground and died. Whoosh! When she jumped back to the city wall, a few arrows behind her pierced into the wall. Qin Yin couldn't help but feel a chill in her heart. This was war, not a game. She could die at any time. At the foot of the city, a group of volunteer soldiers had already recognized this beautiful girl. Their faces were filled with hatred as they shouted, "She's Qin Yin. It's her. This ugly woman has oppressed the world and preys on the people. She's our enemy. Shoot her. Quickly." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Countless arrows flew over. Zhang Wei hurriedly raised his hand and snatched a shield in front of Qin Yin. The arrows landed on the wooden shield with a pa-pa-pa sound. Suddenly, he felt his body heat up. With a wong sound, a huge fire cauldron appeared on the city wall. It was Chu-Chu. Fire cauldron Chu-Chu spun around on top of the city wall and lightly raised his palm. Boom! A huge palm print landed on the battlefield outside the city, instantly killing a dozen volunteer soldiers and turning them into a pile of ashes. Chu-Chu turned to Qin Yin and said, "Your Highness, your life is related to the survival of the world. Please follow me back to Zetian Palace." Qin Yin gasped for breath and nodded. "Yes, Chu-Chu." At this moment, a heavy cavalry of the Imperial Army galloped over from afar. With a pale face, he shouted, "Not good! Not good! The East Gate has been breached." "What happened?" Zhang Wei said angrily. "The East Gate is so sturdy, how could it be broken?" The Imperial Guard's face was ashen as he said, A god has descended." With just one palm, he shattered the entire East Gate. "Oh my god, a god!" Zhang Wei felt a chill in his heart. Chu-Chu's face also turned pale and said, "Qin Lei, protect Her Highness. Go around the main road through the alley and prepare to break through the East Gate. As long as Her Highness is alive, the Empire still has hope." Qin Lei cupped his fists and said, "Yes, Sir Chu-Chu." Chu-Chu looked at the generals in the crowd and said, "Commander Chu Huaying, lead the Flying Mount Battalion out of the city to face Long Chenlin's main force. Only by delaying his main force outside the North Gate can Her Highness have a chance of breaking through." "Yes." Chu Huaying cupped his fists and looked at Chu-Chu. His eyes were filled with determination. "Even if we die in battle, we will definitely delay Long Chenlin." Chu-Chu gave him a deep look. He felt a little bitter in his heart. After a few seconds, he said, You are the pride of the Empire." Chapter 301. Boom! Another section of the city wall collapsed, and the volunteer soldiers swarmed in. Not to mention the East Gate, even the North Gate in front of them was in danger. Chu-Chu and Qin Lei protected Qin Yin together as they retreated from Zetian Palace Hall. The defeat of Lanyan City was inevitable. The Qin Empire had been around for more than 7,000 years. Finally, on this day, the fate of this ancient empire had come to an end. The war drums thundered, and the Imperial Guards, whose faces were covered with blood, carried the war drums to the city wall. They beat the war drums with all their might and cheered for the Flying Mount Battalion, which was streaming out of the city. Chu Huaying's armor was stained with blood, and his face looked tired. At this moment, the light of dawn fell on his face, making him look exceptionally handsome. With his hand on the hilt of his sword, Chu Huaying walked at the front of the Flying Mount Battalion. With an arrogant look on his face, he looked at the volunteer soldiers who were in formation outside the North Gate of Lanyan City from afar. This volunteer soldier used to be the private army of Qin Yi, the Prince of Jinan. It was an elite army from Bailing City, one of the 7 famous cities of the empire. At this moment, there were only 150,000 soldiers left. It was precisely because of the existence of this army that led to the defeat of Lanyan City. The Flying Mount Battalion was one of the only remaining corps of the Empire. At this moment, there were more than 5,000 soldiers left, and the former commander of the Flying Mount Battalion was Long Qianlin. At this moment, Long Qianlin had become the commander of this volunteer soldier in front of them. History repeated itself again and again, just like a reincarnation. Long Qianlin knew the art of battle formations very well, so he only sent 1/3 of the troops. 50,000 soldiers lined up on the plain, and all of them were armed with spears and shields. They formed 7 circular battle formations, surrounding and protecting each other. Their spears pierced through the gaps between the shields. This was a battle tactic specially created to deal with cavalry. Among the crowd, Long Qianlin spurred his horse forward. With a slightly proud expression on his face, he cupped his fists and said, "Commander Chu Huayin, you are one of the 4 heroes of Lan Yan, and also Lin Muyu's brother. Qianlin pays his respects to you. If Commander Chu is willing to surrender with your ability, Prince Jinan will at least give you the title of Earl or Marquis. Why do you need to risk your life for the decadent and heartless empire?" Chu Huairan slowly unsheathed his sharp sword and said calmly, "I have to bear the burdens of the ruler. His Majesty Qin Jin has bestowed me with great honor. Today I, Chu Huairan, will use my life to protect his daughter, as well as the 5 million citizens of Lanyan City behind me." Humph. Long Qianlin sneered. "Bring it on then." Chu Huayin turned his horse around and looked at the Flying Mount Battalion behind him. He said loudly, "I know that all of you used to be in the army of 5 Valleys City and also Long Qianlin's army. But today all of you are soldiers of the Empire. It is a soldier's duty to protect the country. For the sake of the 5 million people of Lanyan City behind you, charge forward with me. Even if our corpses are buried in the ground, the soil under our feet will remember us. The mountains and rivers will remember us. Kill." The cavalrymen of the Flying Mount Battalion raised their weapons. Their faces were filled with hatred and anger. The sound of hooves gradually became more intense. The 5,000 cavalrymen were like a sharp blade that collided with the shield formation. In an instant, blood and flesh were all over the place. The first rays of the morning sun shone on Chu Huairan's face, but the cloak behind him fluttered. It was as if he was flying higher and higher, just like his dream. Yow! The moment Chu Huairan's sword tore apart the neck of a volunteer soldier, he laughed. "I'm not a competent brother, but I'm a competent soldier of the Empire. Be proud of your brother." Outside the main battlefield, groups of volunteer soldiers had already killed their way into the city from the east and north gates. According to Marshal Ji Yao's order, massacre the entire city. These volunteer soldiers killed anyone they saw after entering the city. They were like ferocious beasts that devoured the lives in Lanyan City. At this moment, among the fleeing commoners, a young lady carrying a harp and her maid could be seen. There were also a few guards wearing the uniform of the Divine Might Battalion. They were moving against the flow of the crowd and heading straight for the North City Wall. Zhang Wei was holding a long saber and riding his horse as he commanded the Imperial Guards to retreat. His gaze swept across the crowd and he hurriedly flew over. He said respectfully, "Miss Zhenxiang, the city gate has been breached. Why are you still here? Leave quickly and follow the commoners out of the city. That's our only hope." Zhenxiang was carrying a harp, but she shook her head with a smile and said, "General Zhang Wei, you should leave quickly. I want to finish the last part of my journey with him on this ruined city wall." Zhang Wei's body trembled. His eyes were red as he cupped his fists and said, "The Empire has let you down and also let him down." Zhenxiang smiled. "Thank you for your understanding, General. Go quickly and save more people." "Yes." Zhang Wei spurred his horse away while Zhenxiang carried the harp and walked on the blood-stained stone steps. Step by step, she arrived at the ruined city wall. She slowly put down the harp on the broken wall where the battlements had fallen. She knelt on the blood-stained city wall and looked at the Flying Mount camp and the volunteer soldiers who were fighting in the distance. She knew that her beloved was dutifully doing his duty among the crowd. "Xiaoyu, burn the Qilin incense for me." Then you should escape too, Xinxiang muttered. The maid was startled. Tears flowed from her eyes as she said, Miss, Xiaoyu won't leave. Xiaoyu wants to die with you. No. Xinxiang turned around and looked at her. Her face was filled with gentleness as she said, You're still young. You haven't met anyone worthy of your love. Your life is still very long. As for me, the person I love is right there. My love will vanish along with him. Once Chu Huai dies, what's the point of Xinxiang living on? Xiaoyu cried like a pear blossom in the rain. Miss, burn the incense and leave. Be obedient. Yes, miss. Xiaoyu lit an incense burner. The purple incense was very strange. Wisps of it lingered around Xinxiang's body. Xiaoyu cried even more fiercely. Miss, Xinxiang gently pulled on the strings of the zither and arranged them one by one. She lowered her head as her tears dripped onto the zither. She held back her sobs as she said, We live together and we die together. Xinxiang was born with love, so I have no regrets even if I die. Xiaoyu cried as she retreated a few steps. She said, If there's a next life, I hope that Miss can stay with Commander Chu for the rest of your life. You don't have to suffer the pain of being separated by heaven and earth anymore. Xiaoyu is leaving now. As she spoke, Xiaoyu leaped up and landed silently under the rubble of the city like the morning sun. The guards looked at each other before cupping their fists and retreating. Xinxiang held back her tears as she looked at the crowd that was fighting below the city wall. She heard Chu Huai's voice and saw the resplendent lights of the star-plucking finger exploding in the crowd. No matter how sharp a sword was, it would not be able to sever the heart of love. The sound of the zither was filled with desolation. This was the first time Xinxiang had played the general zither. The sound of the zither was decisive, and it faintly carried the sound of a powerful army. It seemed to resonate with the battle below the city wall. On the battlefield, Chu Huain's body was riddled with wounds. Even the warhorse he was riding on was riddled with arrows. But as the warhorse galloped, Chu Huain raised his sword again and again, slashing at the bodies of the righteous soldiers. This was like fate. The battle between Chu Huain and Long Qianlin was fate. His love for Xinxiang was also fate. The melody on her fingertips trembled continuously. Xinxiang looked at the person she deeply loved from afar, and her face became increasingly pale. Blood flowed out from her nostrils and the corner of her mouth. The sound of the zither also seemed to weaken due to the passing of life. She forcefully opened her eyes, wanting to take one more look at Chu Huai, but her vision became increasingly blurry. Ah! Chu Huai roared angrily in the crowd. It sounded like the mournful cry of a dying beast. There weren't many soldiers from the Flying Mount Battalion around him anymore. The Flying Mount Battalion had already become history, just like Chu Huai. Bang! The glow of battle energy surged as Chu Huai's star-plucking finger exploded once again, turning a group of righteous soldiers into a pile of flesh and blood. However, at the same time, a sharp arrow pierced into his chest. Chu Huai howled in pain as he gripped the reins tightly. However, the warhorse that was riddled with wounds had also reached the end of its life, and it slowly knelt down. Chu Huai struggled to pick up his long sword. He looked towards the city wall and saw a familiar figure slowly lying on the zither. Ah! Blood flowed down his forehead and into his eyes. This brave and invincible commander of the empire howled in pain as his tears mixed with the blood. He wanted to look again, but he could no longer see anything. He could only swing his sword and slash at the crowd. Pft, pft, pft. Spears pierced Chu Huai's body one after another, but he didn't seem to feel any pain. He waved his long sword crazily, causing heads to fly off. The group of righteous soldiers were so shocked that they retreated one after another. No one dared to move forward anymore. This commander, who was famous for his talent and was one of the 4 heroes of Lanyan, was like a mad beast. The righteous soldiers formed a circle around Chu Huai, but no one dared to attack him. Chu Huai's body was pressed against the spears as he knelt there. His tears and blood continuously splashed onto the yellow soil. Suddenly, he reached into his clothes and used the last of his strength to take out a blood-stained ball. He said in a voice as soft as a mosquito, "Yao, brother is gone." Outside the battle formation, Long Qianlin was riding on a warhorse. His body trembled slightly as he bowed his head in the direction of Chu Huayin and said, "No one is allowed to touch Chu Huayin's corpse. Do you understand?" "Yes, General." The group of generals cupped their fists. At this moment, a messenger suddenly galloped over and said loudly, "General, something bad has happened. Lin Muyu has led the Longdan army camp's men here. They will arrive at the battlefield in 5 minutes at most." "He's finally here?" Long Qianlin raised his hand slightly and said, "Block the north gate of Lanyan City with 20,000 men. Let Lin Muyu and the Longdan army camp enter with the remaining 100,000 men. Surround them. This is a battle of annihilation." A general asked, "General, you want to kill Lin Muyu?" Long Qianlin's eyes flickered as he said, "If you kill someone's elder brother and they have the ability to kill you, will you spare their life?" "I understand." The group of volunteer soldiers slowly dispersed as the Longdan army camp entered. Lin Muyu rode on his warhorse and ignored the volunteer soldiers who were surrounding him. He headed straight for the center of the battlefield and saw countless corpses in the distance. The Empire's purple Yinhua flag was scattered all over the ground. There was a person kneeling at the spot where the most corpses were piled up. His blood-stained commander's cloak fluttered gently in the wind. That was Chu Huai. Lin Muyu felt as if his heart had been pierced by thousands of arrows. His body swayed and he fell to the ground. He scrambled to his feet and stumbled all the way to Chu Huai's corpse. He hugged his ice-cold body and almost couldn't cry. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he hugged Chu Huai's body tightly. He cried out sorrowfully, as if he was a wild beast that had lost its loved one. Chapter 302. Plop. The exquisite ball, which was covered in blood, fell to the ground. Lin Muyu looked at it, and his heart felt like it was being stabbed by a knife. He gently picked up the exquisite ball and stuffed it into his clothes. He raised his hand and tore off his holy temple cloak, instantly tearing it into strips. He mounted his horse and tied Chu Huayin's corpse behind him. Tears flowed down his cheeks as he pulled out the pear-blossom spear that was stabbed into the side of his horse. He muttered, "Revenge." Luo Yu, Wei Chou, and the others pulled out their weapons one after another. Their faces were filled with anger and hatred as they shouted, "Revenge! Revenge!" At this time, Long Qianlin had already finished setting up the battle formation. The Iha nation's army was all around them. Long Qianlin had 150,000 elite soldiers, and 10,000 of them had been killed by Chu Huayin. There were still 140,000 of them left. His military strength was definitely above that of the Longdan army camp. However, Long Qianlin didn't dare to be careless, because the person commanding the Longdan army camp was Lin Muyu. She was the opponent he feared the most in his life. "Cavalry, move out." The Yong army finally mobilized the Lingnan heavy cavalry. About 30,000 of them slowly moved out of the formation, facing off with the flying geese formation. They were ready to attack at any time. Luo Yu raised her spear high and shouted, "Regroup the front line. Cone formation." Long Qianlin was too arrogant. He actually wanted to use the flying geese formation to take over the Longdan army camp. However, it wasn't going to be that easy. Everyone in the Longdan army camp was equipped with shields and armor. It wasn't going to be that easy to take them down. "Charge!" Lin Muyu acted as the sharp blade of the cone formation. She patted her horse and galloped forward. The sound of the horse's hooves could be heard behind her as she charged towards the opponent's flying geese formation. Just as the two sides were about to collide, the soldiers of the Brave Dragon Battalion took out their longbows and shot a round of arrows. Furthermore, they were using white diamond arrowheads. The white diamond was so sharp that it could penetrate a 10-centimeter thick steel plate. How could the Lingnan cavalry's armor withstand it? Puff, 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 puff. Blood splattered everywhere. One round of arrow rain was enough to injure or kill thousands of Lingnan cavalrymen. This kind of loss was nothing much, but the corpses of the cavalrymen quickly became obstacles for their comrades at the back. When they collided with each other, the losses were hard to calculate. What was worse was that the Courage Dragon Battalion was charging towards them. The group of people led by Lin Muyu suddenly thrust their spears forward. Amidst the violent collision, the two heavy cavalry clashed head-on. In an instant, it was clear who had the upper hand. Lin Muyu's expensive equipment showed her advantage. She killed the Lingnan cavalry with a single charge. After nearly 20 minutes of charging, both sides changed their positions and regrouped their formation. They were ready to attack again. However, the Lingnan cavalry had lost almost 5,000 men. On the other hand, the Longdan army camp had lost less than 1,000 men. Bastard! Long Qianlin clenched his fist and said coldly, "What kind of arrowhead is that? Can actually pierce through our steel shields. Lin Muyu is just too terrifying." A military officer cupped his fist and said, "General, do you want me to send someone to fetch an arrowhead for us to take a look? There's no need. Don't disturb the battlefield." "Yes." He hesitated for a moment and said, But our heavy cavalry is clearly not a match for the Longdan army camp. If we continue to fight them head-on, I'm afraid we'll suffer a great loss." Long Qianlin raised his eyebrows and said, "If we can use 30,000 heavy cavalry to exchange for the 10,000 Longdan army camp, then this deal will be too profitable." Yes. However, everything was not as Long Qianlin had imagined. After fighting for more than 2 hours, only a few of Lingnan's 30,000 heavy cavalry were left. At most, there were only 2,000 injured soldiers left. However, there were still more than 8,000 people from the Longdan army camp standing proudly on the battlefield. Lin Muyu, Wei Chou, Luo Yu and the rest were already covered in blood. No one knew how many people they had killed. They only knew that their comrades were decreasing one by one. The pear blossom spear seemed to have been bathed in blood. Even the handle that was holding it was a little slippery. Lin Muyu lightly shook her arm. Immediately, the pear blossom spear buzzed loudly and shook off all the blood. Looking at the volunteer army camp in the distance, Lin Muyu slowly raised her arm and pointed the pear blossom spear at them. She smiled and said, "Follow me and attack their volunteer army camp." Yes. The Longdan army camp did not wait for the enemy to reorganize their formation and launched their attack. There was no place for modesty on the battlefield. Lin Muyu understood the principle of not missing an opportunity. She would not give Long Qianlin any time to catch his breath. "Oh no! They aren't even resting before charging," said a military officer with a pale face in the middle of the volunteer army. Long Qianlin immediately waved his hand and said in a low voice, "Order them to immediately reorganize the heaven and earth formation and block the Longdan army camp." Yes. A group of archers, pikemen, and shield-bearers formed a circular battle formation and attacked rapidly. It was this battle formation that defeated Chu Huayi's flying mount camp. Now, Long Qianlin was using the same tactic again. It seemed like he wanted Lin Muyu to end up like Chu Huayin. Not only that, he swept his gaze across the crowd and cupped his fists. "Lord Ko Bin, please come out and help us kill Lin Muyu." Among the crowd, a middle-aged general who seemed to be in his 50s rode out of the formation. His face was expressionless, but when he frowned, an invisible aura descended on the surroundings, causing Long Qianlin and the others to feel a boundless pressure. This was the domain of a Saint Realm expert. This Ko Bin was one of the Saint Realm experts that Luolan had brought down from the Sacred Peak. Currently, he was under Long Qianlin's command. As soon as Ko Bin came out of the battle formation, it seemed like all the Iha Nation soldiers were excited. Lin Muyu and the others naturally did not know about Ko Bin's existence. In the midst of a chaotic battle, how could Lin Muyu be distracted to use the spiritual pulse technique? The pear blossom spear in her hand was stained with blood again. Facing the heaven and earth formation, Lin Muyu decisively ordered the white diamond arrows to open up a path. After shooting the shield bearers on the periphery, They charged straight in and used the heavy armor of the Longden army camp to block the arrows. At the same time, they trampled with their iron hooves, instantly destroying the heaven and earth formation formed by 5,000 people. Continue. Follow me and charge forward. The army collided with the second heaven and earth formation. Lin Muyu took the lead, waved her iron fist, and directly punched out with chaos of the common people. With a bang, more than 10 shield-bearers were sent flying and turned into blood. Behind her, Wei Chou shot an arrow and killed captaincy in the formation. Then, the Longden army camp charged straight in and was about to destroy the second heaven and earth formation. Long Qianlin narrowed his eyes and watched from afar. His palms were drenched in sweat as he said faintly, "Lin Muyu, I want to see how you're going to defend against a saint. If you die in battle, I'll collect your corpse. I won't let you suffer any humiliation. You're the same as Chu Huaying, a respectable soldier of the empire. You're the pride of this land." In the battle formation, a person suddenly broke through the wind. It was Ko Bin. Ko Bin held a long saber in his hand and attacked from the right side. The handle of the saber swept diagonally, and the power of the sanctuary surged. Immediately, the heads of 5 soldiers in the Longden army camp flew into the air. Some of them even had their helmets cut off. After this attack, Ko Bin roared and punched forward with his iron fist. Suddenly, the space was slightly distorted. In the next moment, with a bang, more than 10 soldiers in the Longden army camp were all swallowed by the flames. The flames in the battle formation soared into the sky. This was the cultivation of a sanctuary expert. "It's a sanctuary," Wei Chou shouted. "Men, come with me and kill them." "No, you stay." Lin Muyu looked at Wei Chou from afar and gestured for him to stop. She said, "Everyone, change your bows and arrows. Let's kill this sanctuary expert first. I'll distract him." With that, Lin Muyu turned over and dismounted from the horse. She used the falling star steps and moved faster than the horse. The pear blossom spear was already hanging on the horse's back, but she raised her hand and pulled out the dragon spirit sword. She attacked from behind Ko Bin. With a roar, the fire in her palm was dense, and she directly used a spiral break that was infused with the true dragon essential fire. At the same time, with a swoosh in the air, the invisible demonic noise saber also flew out. "Die!" In the crowd, Ko Bin brazenly punched the heart of a soldier in the Longden army camp, but he also felt the strong flame energy behind him. He quickly turned around and saw Lin Muyu. He couldn't help but laugh. "Second heaven of the heaven realm? You'll still die." He spurred his horse forward, his eyes filled with killing intent. Suddenly, his aura rose, and the surrounding time seemed to freeze. Suddenly, everyone couldn't move, and an invisible aura controlled everything. "Domain! Ha!" Ko Bin laughed maniacally as he charged toward Lin Muyu. His fists were covered in scorching flames, and he blasted the dragon flame's spiral break aside before unleashing another punch that struck the wall of her golden gourd. Bam! Lin Muyu was completely immobilized within the domain, and she threw up a mouthful of blood as she flew back a few steps. However, right at this moment, Wei Chou and the others, who were over 100 meters away, weren't within the domain. He raised his demon devouring bow, and an arrow flew through the air before striking Ko Bin's suit of battle armor. The arrow penetrated about 3 centimeters into the suit of battle armor, and Ko Bin hurriedly stumbled back a few steps with an astonished expression on his face. How is this possible? His aura was thrown into disarray, and his domain also disappeared. Lin Muyu spun around and landed firmly on the ground. Her battle boots shone with a golden light as she stomped on the ground. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Golden gourd vines rose from the ground and bound Ko Bin tightly, not giving him any chance to break free from the gourd vines. Xiahou Sang, Luo Yu, and the rest all took out their bows and arrows and released them. In an instant, Ko Bin had turned into a porcupine. Crack! An invisible demonic noise saber flew through the air, slicing through Ko Bin's head as well as the gourd vines. A Saint Domain powerful being had just died in the midst of a chaotic battle, and that seemed to further reinforce the saying that 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. let alone the elite Longdan army camp. Ko Bin had underestimated his opponent far too much. After getting onto her steed, Lin Muyu's expression became even more resentful as she yelled, "Continue to charge!" The morale of the Iha nation soldiers was also shaken by Ko Bin's death. Long Qianlin was completely flabbergasted, and he couldn't help but mutter, "How is this possible? Great General, should we retreat our command camp?" One of the generals suggested. Long Qianlin gritted his teeth in response. "No, switch from defense to offense. Gather our forces and hold off the Longdan army camp." Yes. Chapter 303. Mount Heaven's Causeway was a solitary peak that towered between heaven and earth. When Feng Jixing arrived at Mount Heaven's Causeway with 30,000 imperial guards, there was no trace of the imperial flag. Instead, Mount Heaven's Causeway was surrounded by the Tianshu province army that had changed their flag. 80,000 Tianshu soldiers were camped at the foot of Mount Heaven's Causeway, and their leader was Yuqi Tian, the head of the Yuqi family. However, the Tianshu army was no longer wearing the insignia of the empire. Instead, they were wearing the insignia of the Iha nation. Yuqi Tian had committed treason. Tuck, tuck, tuck. It was the envoy of the Tianshu army. He held a white flag in his hand and had an arrogant look on his face. When he arrived in front of the imperial army, he laughed out loud and said, "I, Li Tong, the Heavenly Corps Army Adjunct, pay my respects to the commander of the imperial army, Lord Feng Jixing. You are an outstanding man, so you should understand the meaning of obeying the will of the heavens. The 80,000 soldiers of the Tianshu army have surrendered to the Iha nation. Together with the 50,000 reinforcements from Lingnan, there are 130,000 soldiers waiting for you, Lord Feng Jixing. His Highness, the Southern Guardian King, has said that as long as you are willing to surrender to the Iha nation, he will confer you the title of Northern Guardian King. What do you think, Lord?" Feng Jixing sat on his warhorse with a tired expression. He looked at Li Tong indifferently until he saw that Li Tong was a little ill at ease. "Lord, why are you looking at me like that?" Feng Jixing smiled. "I want to see what a dog's face looks like." "You," Li Tong said angrily. "Feng Jixing, don't think that you're so great just because you're the commander of the Imperial Guards. Let me tell you, the Empire is finished. From now on, it will be the Iha nation's world. You, Feng Jixing, are nothing more than a dog of the Empire. Commander Yuqi Tian sent me here to negotiate with you because he thinks highly of you, Feng Jixing. Otherwise, my 130,000 soldiers would be able to destroy your mere 30,000. Then let him destroy us." Feng Jixing suddenly pulled out his saber and directly chopped off Li Tong's head. Blood splattered far away, but none of the surrounding Imperial Army generals dodged, allowing the blood to splatter on their bodies. This way, no one will be able to report back to Yuqi Tian and have him destroy us, Luo Lai said indifferently. Feng Jixing smiled. "Don't worry. I'm sure that old dog Yuqi Tian will understand what I mean." "What now?" "His Majesty has been murdered." Feng Jixing murmured, "Let's retreat. Retreat towards the direction of the imperial capital. Retreat as we fight. But I don't know if I can bring you all back to the imperial capital alive. We will follow the commander without any regrets even if we die," Luo Lai said with a smile. When Feng Jixing and the others turned around to retreat, the sound of war drums could be heard from behind them. The 80,000 soldiers from the Tianshu army had already caught up and were charging over from all directions. Meanwhile, another group of Iha nation's troops appeared in the forest on the side. It was the troops from Lingkong province. Feng Jixing's eyes turned cold as he said, "Don't continue fighting. Cavalry, switch to bows and long-range projectiles. Cover the infantry's retreat." Yes. Sounds of killing could be heard from all directions in the forest. In Lanyan City, dust was flying everywhere on the battlefield north of the city, but the battle was nearing its end. The afterglow of the setting sun shone on the battlefield, illuminating the pools of blood. After a whole day of fighting, the Longdan army camp had not been able to charge out of here. But the Iha nation had paid an even heavier price. More than half of the 150,000 elite soldiers under Long Chenlin's command had been killed by the Flying Mount camp and the Longdan army camp in a single day. Chief General. An old general looked at the unbearable scene on the battlefield and said with a trembling voice, "These Iha nation soldiers are the Lingnan warriors who were raised by His Highness, the Prince of Jinnan. Now, 90,000 of our 150,000 soldiers have died in battle. I'm afraid it's not appropriate for us to continue fighting. Otherwise, if His Highness investigates, I'm afraid that Chief General will not be able to absolve himself from the blame. No, we must kill everyone in the Longdan army camp." Long Chenlin looked at the battlefield with an ashen face and said, "There are only slightly more than 1,000 soldiers left in the Longdan army camp. Only by killing them can it be considered a real victory. If we don't get rid of the Longdan army camp today, this troop will definitely be a huge problem for us in the future." The old general gritted his teeth and said, "Chief General, His Highness gave you the military power so that you can fight for the Iha nation. However, you seem to have placed the grudge between you and Lin Muyu in a more important position. If that's the case, I'm afraid I have to consider reporting to His Highness." "You?" Long Chenlin narrowed his eyes. The old general continued, "I've also heard that it was Lin Muyu who saved your wife, Hu Xiaoyun, when you were in Five Valley City. I don't know if that's true. Since you're indebted to Lin Muyu, why are you so ruthless, Chief General?" Long Chenlin laughed miserably and said, "Do you think that I don't want to let Lin Muyu go? However, do you know what kind of price we'll have to pay once Lin Muyu takes her revenge? I'm afraid it won't be as simple as tens of thousands of people. However, since you've said so, let's drop the matter for today. I don't want a hero like Lin Muyu to die on the battlefield. Men, sound the gongs to retreat and let Lin Muyu enter the city." "Yes, General." The gongs sounded and the Iha nation soldiers under Long Chenlin's command retreated like a receding tide, opening up a path to Lanyan City for the Longdan army camp. Lin Muyu was panting heavily. The fighting energy and physical strength in her body were almost depleted. Even the strength to hold the dragon spirit sword was strained. Beside her, Acatosaurus's red crystal scales were covered in blood. The little fellow was very happy after being released to help in the battle. However, it was so tired that it followed beside Lin Muyu like a reptile. Looking at Lanyan City in the distance, it had already changed. "Xiaoyin," Lin Muyu murmured, but she didn't know if her beloved was still alive. Wei Chou, who was covered in blood, said calmly, "Commander, they're massacring the city." Yes, Lin Muyu could see everything clearly. At this moment, Lanyan City was almost filled with the Iha nation's troops. Under Marshal Ji Yao's Iron Order, the Iha nation's army of more than 200,000 soldiers were massacring the citizens of Lanyan City. There was no resistance, only death and fear. Boom! Another section of the city wall collapsed, and a body fell from the broken wall. A Guqin and a woman were lying among the rubble. Lin Muyu's gaze swept across, and his heart couldn't help but ache. It was Jinxiang. He urged his horse forward and carried Jinxiang's body. He untied Chu Huaying's body and handed them to the soldiers of the Longdan army camp behind him. "Luo Yu, lead the Longdan army camp around the city and look for Her Highness Yin and Chu Yao. Once you find them, bring them far away. Wei Chou, Xiahou Sang, the two of you will bring the remaining Imperial Guards and follow me into the city. Also, bury Big Brother and Jinxiang together. Even if they can't be together in life, at least they can be together in death." "Yes, my lord." There were only slightly more than 1,000 people left in the Longdan army camp. Lin Muyu really didn't want this army that he had raised with his own hands to die in the chaos. At least he wanted to leave a torch for the Longdan army camp and the empire. As night fell, the Longdan army camp disappeared into the night. Lin Muyu, Wei Chou, and Xiahou Sang brought more than a dozen Imperial Guards into the city. They could only hope that Qin Yin could successfully escape. However, it was easier said than done. The Iha nation had sent countless soldiers and peerless masters to hunt down the empire's crown prince in the city. In the distance, there were howls on Tongtian Street. Countless commoners were banished to the streets. Then, they were killed by a group of brave soldiers carrying broadswords. The screams of young girls could be heard from the rubble on the side. The Iha nation had conquered Lanyan City, so it was inevitable that they would abduct the young women in the city. This seemed to be an unwritten rule. Is this what it means to be benevolent and to treat all living things equally? Wei Chou couldn't help but sneer. He didn't hide the grief and indignation on his face. Lin Muyu led the group into the alley and rushed all the way. They didn't dare to provoke the Iha nation's soldiers. If they killed one person, they would attract 10 or even 100 people. Then, there would be no need to talk about saving Qin Yin. Not far away, a pile of corpses was being burned. They were all commoners who had been slaughtered. The burnt smell permeated the entire Lanyan city. Judging from the light of the fire, more than 1/3 of the city had been burned and killed. Lanyan city was very large and could accommodate 5 million people. The Iha nation's massacre would probably continue for a long time. When the group took a detour to the vicinity of Zetian Palace, they saw from a distance that Zetian Palace had been heavily surrounded by the Iha nation's army. The dozen or so people under Lin Muyu's command were simply courting death. However, there were still many Iha nation's cavalrymen coming and going in Zetian Palace. They seemed to be searching for something. Xiao Yin probably hasn't been found yet. Lin Muyu secretly rejoiced and said, "We don't need to enter Zetian Palace. We'll set up an ambush in this alley. We'll knock a few people unconscious and interrogate them." Yes. The group of people tied up their war horses and hid in an empty house. The commoners had been captured and killed, so there would be no one left. They waited until midnight. Finally, a group of cavalrymen galloped over. Under the starlight, they could see that the person at the front was wearing a black cloak and armor. He was actually a high-ranking general with 3 stars on his collar. He was a commander-level person. Lin Muyu's eyes turned cold and she said, "Do it!" Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The golden gourd vines quickly rose and entangled all the people in the alley. Lin Muyu rushed down with her sword. With a wave of her long sword, she directly cut off the head of the commander at the front. It seemed that he was a civil general who did not know martial arts. The group of people following Lin Muyu were all imperial guards. Their cultivation levels were extremely high. They finished off the group of cavalrymen in 2 or 3 moves, leaving only one alive. This survivor looked at the corpse under Lin Muyu's sword and muttered, "It's over! It's over! The commander is dead," Wei Chou said coldly. "A mere commander, what does he count as?" The bodyguard was aghast and said, He is the Iha kingdom's General Lin Yu?" "Lin Yu?" Lin Muyu was stunned. "The Lin Yu who used the tactic of crossing the mountains with a green raincoat?" "Yes." "Good death." Lin Muyu swept her gaze across and said, "Leave no survivors. Change into their clothes and continue to look for Her Highness Yin." "Yes." The sky gradually brightened. The holy temple was full of commoners who were seeking refuge. They hoped that the guards of the holy temple could save them and escape the massacre of the city. But how could they escape? Boom! Under the fierce palm wind, the bodies of the 2 Iha kingdom cavalrymen were torn apart. The holy temple's grand deacon, Lei Hong, stood guard outside the holy temple. He looked towards the east and said, "It's daybreak." But at this moment, a powerful aura suddenly descended from the sky. He hurriedly looked up and a trace of despair flashed in his eyes. "Luo Lan!" Chapter 304. Luo Lan, who was wearing a golden robe, stood in the air. She looked at Lei Hong with disdain. Divine power surrounded her. She smiled faintly and said, "You are Lei Hong, one of the 2 sacred regions of Lanyan City?" Lei Hong raised a shining iron spear. His eyes were filled with reverence. He said, "Luo Lan, the sacred temple is the temple of the continent's cultivators. Since ancient times, it has not been blasphemed. No matter how many soldiers pass by, no one is allowed to start a massacre in the sacred temple. Iha country massacred the entire city, but definitely not in my sacred temple. No, I don't kill. Luo Lan's lips curled up. She said indifferently, I'm only here to meet you, one of the two sacred regions of the empire. Lei Hong glanced at the bustling citizens of Lanyan City in the sacred temple. He also saw Guyang, Qin Yan, and the others looking at him. He shouted, Close the doors of the sacred temple. No matter what happens, don't come out. Qin Yan gritted his teeth. Grand Deacon, Lei Hong said decisively, Close the doors. Guyang pushed with his palm. Immediately, the doors of the sacred temple closed. Through the gap of the doors, Lei Hong, dressed in a white robe, raised his iron spear high up. The power of the spirit-returning art quickly spun. Good, good. Luolan praised twice and laughed. This is the first time I've met such an opponent since I came to the lower realm. Heh. But it's still not enough. I didn't expect that after Qini ascended 200 years ago, the powerhouses in the lower realm would be so weak that a mere Saint Venerable can become the St. Hall's Grand Deacon. As she spoke, Luolan suddenly thrust out with one hand. A blood-red blade came out of her body. First-class martial spirit, demon blood blade. In the next moment, the light of the demon blood blade fell down like a mountain. Bang! Dust rose. The spear in Lei Hong's hand was broken into two. A bloodstain appeared on his shoulder. But he seemed to not feel the pain at all. He suddenly leaped and rushed towards Luolan. His left hand was behind his back. He quickly raised his right hand. The second-class martial spirit Starlight Sword came out of his body. The blade was surrounded by the golden divine power of the spirit-returning art. It broke through the air. Good timing! Luolan chortled with glee as she gently swept an arm through the air, upon which a suit of battle armor quickly materialized. Bursts of divine power were injected into the suit of battle armor, and the suit of battle armor was able to forcibly repel Lei Hong's attack. However, Lei Hong's attacks were unending. The moment his martial spirit shattered, he raised his palm, and the soul-returning art transformed into a golden light that fell from the sky. It was like a golden bell that enveloped Luolan and the demon blood saber. With a wung sound, the flames soared into the sky and burned fiercely. Luolan was dead? No, God would not be defeated so easily. In the next moment, with a chi-la sound, space distorted slightly, and a spatial crack suddenly appeared behind Lei Hong. Luolan's figure came out, and she said indifferently, It ends here, Lei Hong, go to the afterlife. Buzz. The demon blood saber glowed brightly, forming a powerful divine realm domain that enveloped Reiham and Luolan. Arg! Lei Hong let loose a howl of anguish as blood flowed from the corners of his mouth. He abruptly fell to his knees, and he was completely unable to activate his Saint Realm domain. In the face of Luolan's power, he appeared to be extremely weak. Furthermore, the blood that was seeping out of the corners of his mouth transformed into beads of blood that flew toward the demon blood saber. The demon blood saber was a renowned, lethal weapon that devoured the blood essence of others in order to become more powerful. Golden red light swelled even further, and Luolan's expression was quite sinister as she chortled with glee. Accept your fate. The history of our empire is over. Lei Hong's body began to twist and contort, but he gritted his teeth and endured the immense pain without uttering a single sound. A series of bloody grooves appeared on his skin and face, and his energy and blood were being sucked dry by the demon blood saber. However, he was unwilling to give up his entire cultivation base to the demon blood saber. You! Reiham roared into the sky. The underworld azure stone ring on his thumb buzzed out of the black tortoise shield. However, it instantly shattered under the pressure of the demonic blood saber. Reham's muscles and chi and blood swelled up as he roared, Take revenge for me! Pong! Golden light exploded, and the entire plaza in front of the temple turned into a huge pit. Lei Hong's body had already disappeared. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. A dignified grand deacon of the temple had actually died without a complete corpse. Ding. The azure netherstone ring was very sturdy, and it actually fell into the rubble in the huge pit unscathed. Humph! Luo Lan snorted coldly, and suddenly slapped out with his palm. Amidst the rumbling sound, the metal doors of the temple turned into dust and fell down. He looked at Guyong, Qin Yan, and the group of commoners in the temple and said indifferently, I, Luo Lan, have already become a god, and am not willing to harm the common people, so I won't kill you. However, you must tell me there is still a holy region. Where is that Chu-Chu? Qin Yan raised the fire serpent spear and walked forward step by step, the dragon scale armor covering his body. His eyes were filled with anger as he said, Don't think that you can humiliate the lives of others just because you are a god. You want to kill Chu-Chu? Dream on. Ha ha ha. Luo Lan looked deeply at Qin Yan and said, You are not worthy for me to make a move. Scram. Bullshit. Qin Yan roared angrily, raising his spear and rushing towards the sky. He landed diagonally, and the spear pierced downwards like lightning. However, Luo Lan did not do anything at all. The protective astral wall on the surface of his body forcefully sent Qin Yan flying. A stream of fresh blood spurted out in the air. Qin Yan's arms were already injured. Falling to the ground in a sorry state, Guyong hurriedly helped Qin Yan up, his gaze hinting for him to stop attacking. And the group of instructors and sparring masters in the temple were nearly scared out of their wits. Could be seen how strong this god in front of them was. The strongest instructor of the temple could not even touch him, and he was already heavily injured. If it were someone else, they would probably have been smashed into pieces long ago. Guyong looked at Luo Lan, shook his head, and said indifferently, The massacre of the Iha kingdom, everyone's whereabouts are unknown. As for where Chu-Chu is, we don't know either. Humph! Luo Lan snorted coldly, turned around, and flew out. Guyong sucked in a breath of cold air, and said, Don't hesitate anymore. Escort the citizens out of the city. The more that can escape, the better. Lord Qin Yan, can you still move? Qin Yan held onto his spear, wiped off the blood at the corner of his mouth, and said, I'm fine. Let's go. I wonder how Big Brother and Big Brother Lin Muyu are doing? An instructor cupped his fists and said, I heard that the Flying Mount camp was completely annihilated, and Lord Chu Huayin has already died for the country. Ah! Qin Yan was startled, and his eyes could not conceal the vexation and unwillingness, and said, As soldiers of the Empire, we are hiding here. We can't be like Lord Chu Huayin. His blood has already dyed the yellow sand. This is simply a type of humiliation. Guyong said, To be able to escort these thousands of citizens out of the city is a merit of our temple. Quick, don't hesitate, get everyone out. Hiding in the temple will never escape this massacre. Yes, under the ruins, Lin Muyu, Wei Chou, and the others were wearing the uniforms of the Iha nation soldiers, and they slowly rode their horses under the southern city wall of Lanyan City. They did not dare to shout loudly, and could only search for Qin Yan's figure among the passing citizens. At the city gate, a group of Iha nation soldiers armed with swords and sabers were guarding there, blocking the citizens' path of retreat. Any citizen who wanted to pass through this place had already been killed, and the corpses were piled up like a mountain. Some were burned on the spot, some were dragged further away to be buried, and even more were left exposed in the wilderness. Lord! After seeing Lin Muyu's military rank, a patrolling officer immediately cupped his fists respectfully and said, May I know where Lord is going? Lin Muyu glanced at him and said, Remnant of the Empire. Where's Qin Yin? The patrolling officer smiled and said, So Lord is also here for the 1 million Qin Yin coins? 1 million Qin Yin coins? Yes, Marshal Ji Yao offered a reward this morning. Anyone who captures Qin Yin will be rewarded with 1 million Qin Yin coins. However, it's not easy to capture Qin Yin. The Imperial Army is not completely wiped out yet, and it's said that Qin Lei has brought thousands of men to protect Qin Yin and leave the city through the broken wall. However, He can't have gone far, and General Lu Zhao has already led 20,000 cavalry to chase after him. Where are the Imperial Guards? The southern suburbs. Got it. Move aside, we're going out of the city to chase after him. All right, let them through. Outside the city, there were piles of corpses everywhere. This massacre had become a feast for the Iha nation of Lingnan. Lin Muyu traveled quickly in silence, while Wei Chou, Xiahou Sang, and the others had ashen faces and bloodshot eyes. As Imperial Guards, they could not protect the citizens of the Empire. Wasn't this a kind of mockery? Command. Wei Chou's ears perked up, and after listening attentively, he said, "There are sounds of fighting in the southeast." Lin Muyu's spirit pulse technique had also sensed many aura's ripples, and she said, "Go quickly, we might be able to make it in time." Yes. The horses galloped through the blood-stained soil, and when Lin Muyu and the others rushed out of the forest, they saw a group of people fighting in the distance. However, the battle was nearing its end, and there were corpses of Imperial Guards and Iha soldiers everywhere. In the open space in the forest, there were hundreds of Iha nation archers holding bows and arrows, continuously shooting at the people in the inner circle. All right. A mid-ranked officer raised his hand and said, "The Imperial Guards of the Qin Empire are all dead, so let's not waste time here. Let's go and chase after Qin Yin. We must eliminate her." Yes. After the hundreds of Iha soldiers left on their horses, Lin Muyu and the others rushed to the battlefield, only to discover that there were many corpses of Imperial Guards around them. At the center, there was a person kneeling there, his entire body pierced with arrows, and the white cloak embroidered with a golden-purple flower was already dyed red with blood. That cloak, white-robed Imperial Guards, it was Qin Lei. Lin Muyu's heart felt as if it had been clawed into pieces. She flipped off her horse and staggered, almost losing her footing. She walked shakily to Qin Lei's side, wanting to hug him, but she realized that there wasn't even a place for her to put her hands on. Qin Lei was kneeling there, his entire body pierced with arrows, and his neck had also been pierced by 7 to 8 arrows, causing blood to flow. "Qin, big brother Qin Lei." Lin Muyu's voice trembled, and she was almost unable to speak. Qin Lei did not die. He closed his eyes, and his tears mixed with blood flowed down. He cried and said, "Is it you? You, Lin Muyu? I can't protect her anymore. I can't protect her anymore." Chapter 305. Lin Muyu pulled out the arrow from Qin Lei's arm, hugged him, and said in a trembling voice, "It's okay. It's okay. Brother Qin Lei, I will protect her in your place. I won't let anyone hurt her." Qin Lei didn't say anything, his body gradually turning cold, and the last strength of his life slowly faded away. Wei Chou, Xiahou Sang, and the other Imperial Guards all dismounted and knelt on the ground, tears flowing uncontrollably. The Imperial Guards of the Qin Empire, the commander of the Imperial Guards, Qin Lei, had died for his country. "Get on the horse and find Her Highness Yin." Lin Muyu mounted the horse and wiped away the tears on his face. He thought he was just a passerby in this world, but today he was no longer. On the roadside, groups of refugees escaped from Lanyan City, but what awaited them were more and more hunting teams. Lin Muyu held the dragon spirit sword and rode back and forth with Wei Chou, Xiahou Sang, and the others, but didn't kill anyone. In front of them, a group of ragged commoners were scared out of their wits when they saw them in the Iha nation's military uniform, but they couldn't run anymore. They just sat in the forest and cried bitterly. Lin Muyu took a deep breath and rode forward, saying, "Don't cry. We're not from the Iha nation. Let me ask you, do you know where Her Highness Qin Yin is?" You're not from the Iha nation?" A young girl about 20 years old asked while crying. "Yes, no, we're the Imperial Army, but we've changed into the Iha nation's uniform." "Then you." The young girl suddenly burst into tears, rushing forward and waving her fists to hit Lin Muyu, crying and saying, "You trash! What Imperial Army? You actually let the dogs of the Iha nation kill so many innocent commoners." You're not the Imperial Army, you're just a bunch of trash. A bunch of useless trash. Lin Muyu endured her beating without saying a word. Perhaps she deserved it. Every Imperial soldier had an undeniable responsibility for the fall of Lanyan City. On the side, Wei Chao's eyes were cold, and he shouted in a low voice, "Enough! Do you think we don't want to fight? Do you think we have fewer casualties? Do you know that the 17,000 soldiers of the Flying Mount Battalion have already been annihilated? Do you know that, in order to save you, only 1,000 of the 20,000 soldiers of the Empire were left in the Longden army camp? Do you know that the commander of the Imperial Guards, Qin Lei, and the commander of the Flying Mount Battalion, Chu Huaying, have already died for their country? Do you know that the person you are fighting has killed hundreds of Iha soldiers? Yes, you're all civilians. You can choose not to participate in the war, but Lanyan City is our home. No one can shirk the responsibility for the destruction of our home. We're soldiers, and it's our duty to fight for our country. But please don't humiliate our dignity as soldiers." The young girl stood there in a daze. After a long while, she sobbed and said, Can we still go home in the future?" "I will," Lin Muyu said softly. "Lanyan City will definitely be recovered. It won't take long. Run as far as you can. When you hear the news that Lanyan City has been recovered, you can go home." "Thank you, my lord. Let's go." The group of civilians stood up and left. At this moment, an old man holding a horsehead zither came over and said, "My lord, the person you're looking for is Her Highness Qin Yin. This old man doesn't know her, but I saw a group of people just now. Among them, there was a woman with an extraordinary bearing. She didn't look like a woman from an ordinary family, and she was holding a zither that looked very expensive." "A zither?" Lin Muyu was stunned and asked, "Where is she?" "She's in the forest to the east. It happened a few minutes ago." "Okay. Thank you, old man." Lin Muyu glanced at Wei Chou and the others and said, "Full speed ahead. We found Xiaoyin." "Okay." More than a dozen people passed through the forest. Further ahead, there was indeed a group of refugees. There were about 200 people, and all of them were staggering. Lanyan City was huge, and the moment they escaped from Lanyan City, they were already exhausted. Yet, they still had to suffer the pursuit of countless Iha Kingdom cavalry. An old woman turned around and saw Lin Muyu and the others. She immediately shouted in terror, "Oh no! Oh no! The Iha Kingdom demons are here again. They're here again." However, no one seemed to be able to run. One of the middle-aged men held a shovel and said, "Fight them to the death." "Yes, fight them to the death." As Lin Muyu galloped over, the man with the shovel suddenly bent down and swept the front hooves of Jetty. However, Jetty was a fine horse bred in the endless forest, and he leaped to avoid it. Lin Muyu quickly turned back and whispered, "Don't attack. We're not Iha Kingdom soldiers." However, the sound of a sword being unsheathed came from behind. Lin Muyu suddenly turned back and saw the golden god binding chains martial soul hovering around the blade. He hurriedly lifted his cloak and shouted, "Xiaoyin, it's me!" "Ah!" Qin Yin suddenly cried out, and the zither in her hands fell to the ground. She leaped into Lin Muyu's arms and cried loudly, but she didn't say a word. Lin Muyu hugged Qin Yin and gently stroked her back. After nearly 10 minutes, Qin Yin finally raised her head and said, Lanyan City has fallen. The empire no longer exists. No, the empire will be rebuilt, and our home can be rebuilt, but we can't lose confidence." Lin Muyu looked at her deeply and said, "Xiaoyin, you must be strong. All of us are waiting for you to lead us to rebuild the empire." Qin Yin responded with a whimper, and her tears fell uncontrollably. "How is Lanyan City?" "All 4 sides of the city wall have fallen." Lin Muyu said in a trembling voice, "Chu Huayin died for the empire. Qin Lei also died for the empire." "Ah." Qin Yin's body trembled slightly, and she looked in the direction of Lanyan City with teary eyes. "What happened to the empire? Brother Yu?" Do you have any news of Commander Feng Jixing? No. Lin Muyu shook her head and said, Xiao Yin, do you have any news of Chu and Chief Deacon Lei Hong? And Chu Yao, do you know anything? Qin Yin said, Chu was originally with us, but in order to divert the attention of the volunteer soldiers, we got separated. Chief Deacon Lei Hong escorted the medical officers of the spiritual medicine department to seek refuge in the Holy Temple. Sister Chu Yao is among them, but I heard that Luolan, the God State expert, has already gone to the Holy Temple. I'm afraid. Sister Chu Yao will be fine, Lin Muyu said blankly, but even she couldn't convince herself with these words. At this moment, Wei Chou suddenly said in a low voice, Commander, there are people coming. They are from the Iha nation, and there are at least 1,000 cavalrymen. What should we do? If we leave, I'm afraid Princess Yin and the people will. We won't leave, Lin Muyu said indifferently. Even if we die, we must protect this group of people. But don't act rashly. We can't beat 1,000 cavalrymen. Yes. Lin Muyu turned her horse around and walked over to the Iha nation soldiers. There was a captaincy in this group, and when he saw Lin Muyu's military rank, he immediately cupped his fists and smiled. So it's the general here. This subordinate is Captaincy Ding Shi of Sunset City. I wonder why the general is here with a group of traitors of the empire? So it's General Ding Shi. Lin Muyu smiled and said, I've been fighting non-stop these days, and my body is a little tired. When I chased here, I found a zither girl in the crowd who knows how to play music, so I stayed behind to listen to her play a few songs. Ding Shi's gaze swept across Qin Yin in the crowd, and a trace of shock flashed across his face. Then he revealed an understanding expression. The general has a good eye. The marshal has already ordered the massacre of the city. If the general likes this girl, you can take her with you. As for these traitors of the empire, this subordinate will take care of them for the general. No need. Lin Muyu raised her hand and said, Don't let the blood spoil the mood. General Ding, go by yourself. This group of people, I will take care of them myself later. Don't worry. Yes, General. Then this subordinate will also stay behind and listen to a song with the general before embarking on the journey. Okay. Lin Muyu sat down cross-legged. Wei Chou, Xiahou sang, and the others also sat down. Under Lin Muyu's gaze, Qin Yin lifted her cloak to cover her face. She silently sat cross-legged on the grass. After straightening the strings of the zither, she slowly began to play. Her red lips moved slightly, and she sang the battle song of the Qin Empire, the Ballad of the Autumn Goose. Every word fell on the heart of every soldier of the empire like a drizzle. The world is vast, the mountains and rivers are vast, the cold moonlight shines into the battlefield. The rice river is green, the breeze is blowing, the warriors of the empire go to war together to kill all the jackals and wolves. A life of frivolity, who will comfort my wounds. The road home is already impossible to look forward to, only sighing at the high mountains and long rivers, unhindered in all directions, forever defending the country. What harm is there for the soul to return to the ends of the earth? Broken battle robes, warriors, where will the autumn goose be buried? Please take my soul back to the hometown. When the song ended, Wei Chou, Xiahou sang, and the others all had tears in their eyes. Lin Muyu also felt a lump in her throat, thinking of the deaths of Chu Huayin, Qin Lei, and the others. Perhaps this song of Qin Yin could comfort these dead souls, as well as herself and Wei Chou, the remaining soldiers of the empire. Ding Shi's eyes also turned red. He turned over and mounted his horse, cupping his fists, and said, General, I will take my leave. I hope that General will take care of yourself. As long as there is a glimmer of hope, there is still hope for the future. Lin Muyu was stunned. Could it be that Ding Shi already knew that the girl playing the zither was Qin Yin? It must be, but Ding Shi actually let them go. Not long after Ding Shi led his troops away, the sound of hooves came from the east again. A large group of people rushed out of the forest, holding the battle flag of the Longdan army camp in their hands. Although this group of people looked battered and exhausted, under the morning light, The Empire's insignia on their chests glowed with a charming luster. It was Luo Yu and the others. "My lord!" Luo Yu also recognized Lin Muyu and the others. She immediately dismounted and knelt down, saying, We didn't find her highnessing. It's okay. I found her." Lin Muyu stretched out her hand and pointed behind her, saying, "Quickly come and greet her highnessing." Immediately, more than 1,000 Longden army camp mercenaries dismounted and knelt down on one knee, saying, "Your subordinates greet her highnessing." Qin Yin was moved. She raised her hand, saying, "All of you rise." Lin Muyu said, "Time is of the essence. Don't delay anymore. Wei Chou, Luo Yu, the two of you join forces and escort Her Highness Ing out of Lanyan City." "My lord, where are we going?" Luo Yu asked. "Dragon Rocky Mountain." Lin Muyu thought for a moment, then said, "After getting in touch with Cloud Province, escort Her Highness to Twilight Rain City. No matter what, Duke Yun is Her Highness' maternal grandfather. He will protect her." "Yes." Looking at the way Lin Muyu mounted the horse, Luo Yu was stunned. She asked, "My lord, where are you going?" "I'm going to look for Chu Yao." Lin Muyu's expression darkened, and she said, "Once Big Brother Chu Huayin is dead, I will be his only relative. I must find Chu Yao, otherwise, I will be letting down Big Brother Chu's spirit in heaven. Your subordinate will go with you. Don't be ridiculous. You guys escort Her Highness out of here. I can come and go freely by myself. You guys will only be a burden if you follow me." "Yes, my lord." "You!" Qin Yin suddenly called out softly. "What's the matter, Xiaoyin?" Lin Muyu asked with a smile. Although Qin Yin's heart was filled with unease, she smiled slightly and gave him her best look, saying, "The mountains are long and the rivers are far. We will meet again if fate allows it." "Yes, we will meet again." Lin Muyu nodded and rode away. Chapter 306. South of the Seven Seas Province, Jianfeng Ridge, a lone peak pierced the clouds. Banners fluttered at the foot of the mountain. The Jianfeng Ridge Barracks was also one of the 3 major garrisons in the Seven Seas Province. There were 70,000 soldiers stationed at the Jianfeng Ridge Barracks, and they surrounded and protected each other with the Seven Seas Pass. The real purpose was nothing more than to prevent Lanyan City from suddenly attacking. But now, the empire no longer existed, and this army seemed to have become a barrier against the iron hooves of the Iha nation. Thud, thud. Amidst the sound of hooves, a snow-white steed galloped over from the official road. On the back of the steed was a beautiful young lady in a black cloak. Under the moonlight, her eyes were filled with anxiety and helplessness. When she arrived at the barracks gate, a group of soldiers immediately surrounded her and shouted, "Who are you? How dare you trespass into the Jianfeng Ridge Barracks?" Tang Xiaoxi flipped off the steed, and a beautiful face appeared in front of everyone. A 10-man squad leader immediately knelt down with his spear and said, "Princess Shi." Immediately, everyone knelt down in a circle. Tang Xiaoxi looked at everyone indifferently and said, "Bring me to Commander Tang Zhan of the Jianfeng Ridge Barracks." Yes. Tang Zhan was promoted to the commander of the Jianfeng Ridge Barracks after the Battle of Demon Subduing Pass. He was considered one of the important generals of the Seven Seas City. When Tang Xiaoxi rode the steed to the front of the central tent, Tang Zhan had already come out to welcome her. He cupped his fists and said, "Subordinate Tang Zhan greets Princess Shi. May I know what brings Princess Shi to the Jianfeng Ridge Barracks?" "Commander Tang Zhan, please send troops to reinforce Lanyan City," Tang Xiaoxi said resolutely. Tang Zhan sighed and shook his head. "It's too late. Just this afternoon, we received news that Lanyan City has been breached. Her Highness Qin Yin is missing. The Flying Mount Camp and the Imperial Guards have been annihilated. It's said that Chu Huayin and Qin Lei died in battle. Feng Jixing led 30,000 Imperial Guards out of the encirclement." "What?" Tang Xiaoxi retreated a few steps and fell onto her steed. This news was like a bolt from the blue, and she couldn't accept it. "Princess Shi, are you all right?" Tang Zhen asked with concern. Tang Xiaoxi felt a sharp pain in her chest. She clutched her chest and frowned. Where's Mu? How's Lin Muyu? Tang Zhen said. Lin Muyu led 15,000 Longdan army camp soldiers to a bitter battle with Long Qinlin's main force outside the city's north. After killing 70,000 volunteers, the entire army was annihilated. Lin Muyu's whereabouts are unknown. Tang Xiaoxi felt as if she had been struck by lightning. She stood there dumbfounded, and tears streamed down her cheeks. Princess Tang Zhen wanted to say something but stopped. This morning, this general had received Duke Lan's letter and ordered me to hold back no matter what. Without his orders, I cannot even deploy a single soldier. No. Tang Xiaoxi took out a token from her bosom. It was an iron order of the Tang sect. She said, Tang Zhen, I order you to immediately deploy 50,000 soldiers to Lanyan City with me. In addition, send the winged cavalry to the demon-subduing pass and send an order to Ling Huyen. Order her to deploy 100,000 demon clan troops to reinforce Lanyan City with us. But, Princess, what? Do you want to disobey the iron order of the Tang sect? Are you still a general of the Tang family? Are you still a general of the Qin Empire? I. Tang Zhen gritted his teeth and said, Yes, sir. Tang Xiaoxi's beautiful eyes looked at the stars in the southern sky. It was dim there. She murmured, Mu Shaoyin, you must hold on until I come. Don't die. In Lanyan City, there were ruins everywhere. It was a mess. Lin Muyu's nose was filled with the strong smell of blood. He rode slowly on Tongtian Street. On the street, there were piles of cold corpses and flies were flying. Farther away, the soldiers of the Iha kingdom were holding a banquet. They surrounded a group of women in Lanyan City and roasted them with bonfires. They listened to the screams of the girls for fun. Lin Muyu clenched his fists, and the golden martial soul lingered on his arms. But he held back in the end. Yes, he had more important things to do. He could not die here. He quietly came to the holy temple, only to find that it was already on fire. The fire was blazing, just like the fire of Huaxi in the distance. The entire imperial capital was in a state of death. In front of the temple there was a huge crater. Lin Muyu furrowed his brows. His spirit pulse technique detected traces of spiritual energy coming from the rubble. He dismounted from his horse and rummaged through the rubble. Finally, a pitch-black nether stone thumb ring appeared in front of him. This was the gift he gave to Lei Hong. Lei Hong had once said that he wouldn't throw this thumb ring away even if he died. A rather familiar aura filled the air. This was the aura of Lei Hong's power. But Lin Muyu could not feel Lei Hong's life force. He had already disappeared with the wind. Holding the thumb ring, the cold wind blew on his face. His body trembled slightly, and he felt an indescribable heartache. He slowly knelt in the rubble and curled his body in pain. He was like a shrimp, shivering miserably in the cold wind and crying softly. Lei Hong had died in battle, and the holy temple had been burned to the ground. But where was Chu Yao? After a long time, Lin Muyu stood up in the rubble again. Beside him, the Jedi warhorse snorted, waiting for its master's orders. This was indeed a good horse. It had not eaten for a few days, but it still had a lot of energy. Jumping on the horse, Lin Muyu came to the front of the spiritual medicine division. But he found that the door of the spiritual medicine division was already broken. He slowly urged the horse in, but there was no one. The main hall of the spiritual medicine division was filled with corpses. Almost all the pharmacists had been killed, but there was no corpse of Chu Yao. Don't kill me! Don't kill me! Suddenly, a voice came from the medicine cabinet in the corner. Lin Muyu walked forward and said indifferently, Come out! But the person was still trembling and begging, Don't kill me! Don't kill me! In a fit of rage, Lin Muyu raised her sword and slashed the cabinet open. Behind her was a man hugging his knees, trembling uncontrollably. His shoulder was covered in blood, as if he had been slashed by a sword, and he looked rather familiar. It was Luo Bin, the son of Minister Luo Xing. Luo Bin? Lin Muyu looked at him coldly and asked, "Why are you hiding here?" Luo Bin also recognized Lin Muyu and hurriedly crawled over to hug the front leg of the Jedi warhorse. "Lin Muyu, take me away. Take me away. I don't want to die. I don't want to die." Lin Muyu looked at him in disgust. "I'm asking you, where did Chu Yao go?" "Chu Yao. Chu Yao left with Qin Yen and the rest. They are being chased. Being chased to the South Gate." "South Gate?" Lin Muyu snorted coldly, turned his horse around, and left. People like Luo Bin should be left to fend for themselves. The night passed quickly, and when Lin Muyu arrived at the South Gate, he found that there were only some Iha country guards here. He didn't see Qin Yen, Chu Yao, and the rest. "My lord, are you patrolling at night?" a guard asked respectfully. Lin Muyu didn't speak, but the spirit pulse technique transmitted a threatening power he had never felt before. A vast domain descended from the sky, and he hurriedly raised his head to see a person walking through the air, and a palm filled with divine power came crashing down. Came too quickly. Lin Muyu hurriedly leaped off the horse's back with falling star steps. However, she only heard a cry of agony. The Jedi warhorse had been smashed into pieces just like that. Her heart ached. At the same time, she raised her head and saw that the person was floating in the air. His golden robes fluttered in the wind as he looked at her with a pair of eyes filled with disdain. "Luo Lan, it was you who killed Great Deacon Lei Hong?" Lin Muyu said coldly. Luo Lan smiled faintly. "It was me, but compared to Lei Hong, I want to know how capable you, one of the 4 heroes of Lan Yen, are to be put in such an important position by that old dog Qin Jin. Bastard." Lin Muyu knew that he couldn't escape, and could only fight with his life on the line. He swung his blade, and increased his battle energy to 100%. With a shout, the blood in his body boiled, and the golden gourd martial soul's light shot into the sky. For a moment the world spun, and the universe reversed. It was as if all the power in the world could be used by him. 6 glorious heavenly calamity. "Yo! Fighting with your life on the spot?" Luo Lan smiled faintly, and slowly opened his hand. The demon blood saber's light shot into the sky, and its aura did not lose to the 6 glorious heavenly calamity. Lin Muyu's heart went cold. Under Luo Lan's godly state domain, it was already difficult for her to raise her battle energy. Forcibly activating the 6 glorious heavenly calamity brought her endless pain, and her body felt as if it would explode at any moment. At this moment, the voice of the 7 luminaries demon emperor came from the depths of her Ihai. "Heavens, you want to fight with a god? You lunatic!" Lin Muyu roared. "Do I have any other choice? Help me." The 7 luminaries demon emperor sighed sorrowfully. "I owe you my whole life. This time I'm really going to be dragged down by you. It's a pity that I've just cultivated a complete godhead." Sigh. Suddenly, the 7 luminaries demon emperor let out a shrill cry, and immediately, Lin Muyu felt strands of divine power entering her Ihai. The strands of golden warmth quickly flowed into the long sword, and increased the power of the 6 glorious heavenly calamity. "Come on." Luo Lan looked at him as if he was facing a formidable enemy, and laughed heartily. "That old dog Qin Jin has sealed the wind, rain, thunder, and lightning generals, so I'll just kill them all." The demon blood saber met the dragon spirit sword that was strengthened by the golden gourd. Boom! There was an explosion, and the entire South City Gate was once again corroded. Even many of the Iha Nation soldiers who could not dodge in time were swallowed up by the divine power. The demon blood saber emitted a strong devouring power, causing the divine power in Lin Muyu's body to quickly dissipate. This 6 glorious heavenly calamity was defeated. Pfft. Spitting out a mouthful of blood, Lin Muyu felt a burning pain in her shoulder. The demon blood saber's cold light had actually cut into her body, and blood flowed out. "Oh!" he roared angrily, and continued to press down the dragon spirit's sword with all his might. With a bang, it slashed through the air at Luo Lan's righteous chi, but at the same time, The power of the sixth glorious heavenly calamity left the blade. Light-splitting slash. Luo Lan let out a muffled groan and looked at the sword wound on his chest in disbelief. Blood gushed out wildly. Meanwhile, Lin Muyu suffered an even stronger backlash, and with a miserable howl, she crashed into the broken wall of the city. At the same time, with a roar, a catasaurus penetrated through the plane and pounced at Luo Lan with its claws and fangs bared. Evil creature, die! Luo Lan's 5 fingers were like claws, and with one strike, it pierced through Acatosaurus's head and directly crushed the crystal core. Acatosaurus, dead. This attack did not stop. Luo Lan looked at the heavily injured Lin Muyu with a ferocious expression, and with absolute crushing strength, he suddenly stabbed his 5 claws into Lin Muyu's chest. Blood spurted out, and he cackled. You are just a piece of trash. What right do you have to think that you can change the laws of this world? Ha ha ha. I am a god. Only I can set the laws of this world. The light in Lin Muyu's eyes was the light of destruction and despair. He looked at Luo Lan and lightly said, Kill me. If this world cannot destroy me, then I will definitely destroy this world. Puff. Blood flowed, and Luo Lan grabbed Lin Muyu's heart and directly crushed it. That wisp of spiritual sense finally dissipated, and Lin Muyu could no longer see anything. Emptiness. Everything returned to emptiness. Was this the feeling of death? Acatosaurus's corpse lay quietly next to its master's corpse. The red crystal scales on its body rapidly melted into blood, enveloping Lin Muyu's body, and condensed into dark red ice crystals. In the next moment, the ice crystals crazily devoured everything around them, and even Luo Lan was forced to take a few steps back. In the blink of an eye, Acatosaurus's corpse had become a giant ice crystal with a radius of 10 meters, lying in the rubble of the south gate of Yanlan City. Vaguely, a human figure could be seen lying in the red ice crystal, motionless, without a sound. Lin Muyu, dead in battle. End of the first volume. Falling Lilies and Falling Lilies. Notes. Falling lilies and falling lilies, hun, refers to flowers falling from trees, some falling on mats, and some falling into manure pits. It means that people are born unequal, some born in the royal family, some born in the poor. Many people are born with different responsibilities than others, and Qin Yin's name comes from this idiom. Qin Yin is like a flower on a tree, falling into the royal family, but also has to bear a completely different fate. Next, I welcome everyone to continue reading the second volume, Silver Flowers. A new chapter in history is about to open. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.